Greetings, fellow Albuquerque-verse aficionados. Bluedragonfive here,
And Rohith Dhar.
and we're back. We're talking a new chapter in the Albuquerque-verse, not connected to the prior two entries, only by the cast and crew, so to speak. We're talking Pluribus, season one. We're talking Pluribus. So yeah, I've been looking forward to this one. Yeah, this was I was very hyped, yet completely in the dark on Vince Gilligan's new series. Just it was the best way I can describe kind of what it was like to kind of like try and tell people, oh man, you got Pluribus, it's going to be great. It was kind of like what happened when Up came out for me. When Up came out was coming out, it was like this thing where I was instantly sold. I really none of us had any idea what it was going to be. And here's the rough part: much like Pluribus, the title did not do it any favors. Where it's like, what's the movie called? Up? Well, Up. What kind of name is that? What is it? What does it even mean? Well, I mean, I think there's air travel. I mean, it's a house with balloons, so I guess it's there's not really a lot to really And says, well, what's this new Vince Gilligan show called? Pluribus. What the heck does that? How do we even say that? It's like like the Pluribus unum, the thing. It's on the dollar bill. Anyway, so it was like a whole thing there. So bizarre name. Basically this very much there's a lot of cachet of Vince Gilligan's name. I think a lot of this show in terms of you know we have a solid creative team. Everyone kind of knows and recognizes from the work on Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and especially coming off Better Call Saul. There was a lot of there's a lot of like if anyone didn't know what it was, they would at least give the first episode a try, and that's all they would need. It's very much the Albuquerque verse with roots. I mean, the Albuquerque verse in itself. Of course, people are wondering why. What the heck does he mean by Albuquerque verse? Of course, it's the Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul universe, which is set in Albuquerque, which I've kind of I don't think I coined it. I think I popularized it. Maybe I don't know. I call it the Albuquerque verse. I don't know. People who've seen a recap, Tiki and I's recap podcast throughout Better Call Saul know this by this point, but some people might be checking in Pluribus out of morbid curiosity, so I figured I'd just kind of throw that in there. Anyway, so the Albuquerque verse in itself ultimately has roots in sci-fi, thanks to Vince Gilligan's work on X Files, which is what introduced in the Bryan Cranston. Without that episode of the X Files, we do not have Breaking Bad. So it's there's always been like a touch of sci-fi in Vince Gilligan that was very much when they announced the show, was like, well, that could be interesting given the genesis of things. So I had no doubt this was going to be great, but I had no clue what it would be. And the marketing campaign cleverly played into that. The fact that it's like a lot of cryptic images, throughout Better Call Saul, they really love playing with the marketing, the viral marketing, as it were, and like little cryptic kind of teases, and you can call in numbers and all this kind of stuff. So it was fun and just kind of kept you guessing. And just the all we really had was the cell line, like Carol's going to save us from happiness.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, let's give my thoughts. I loved it. I thought it was very clever. It had all the hallmarks of the Albuquerque verse without just being more of the same or as being the same byproduct. I think there's a real story here. I'm looking forward to getting more of it.
Yeah,
How did you feel?
I think overall it's some of the best television I've seen, not just this past year, but I think in the past like 5 or 10 years. I can understand in saying that it seems hyperbolic, but I think the level of direction, writing, and acting, and considering sort of the limitations in the story, you don't have the advantage of having a wide ensemble cast of colorful characters as he would in Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul. You don't have like um you know such a huge propulsive narrative. It's the genius of this show is that it's a slow burn, but then if you really watch it, I've been watching week to week, but I think if people were to watch it overall, it's such a literary, it's a kind of a cinematic novel, for lack of a better term. And I think it touches upon really fundamental ideas that have been explored in classic science fiction, especially in books, and certain avant-garde experimental like sci-fi films, and especially in classic Star Trek. And to see kind of an idea like this be extrapolated and deal with what does it mean for a person to value individualism and the tension between that and collectivism, or just the balance between your self needs and desires versus the needs of the whole, and how there could be a sense of entitlement, a sense of loneliness, and just that kind of tension back and forth, especially as you see sort of how other characters outside the US experience this. It's such a in-depth exploration of how one psyche can deal with that level of isolation. And it's a tour de force of uh, Rhea Super Seaborn's performance. Uh, the direction's fantastic. I think with the ending where it is, it's such a great cliffhanger. But in light of how I felt in retrospect in regards to the 2 seasons of Severance, I am cautiously optimistic for where the plot develops. But out of anyone in television, Vince Gilligan has one of the greater benefits of doubt in terms of his filmography, and the fact that he's going back to his X Files route and making that the premise of an entire show. It's exciting, it's original, and if there's things to progress or make interesting, it's going to be one of the best shows of this decade or in
So
20th.
sorry, I was going to add to so a few things to kind of note. Just Roy, I don't. So Roy, you remind me. So with the so you're all caught up. You've seen Better Call Saul and everything,
I
right?
have not, no.
Okay, I haven't. Okay. Well, let
In the
me.
first, I first saw very few episodes of the first season, and then just never really sat down and watched weekly or even binge watches. So, in terms of my experience of, I'm seeing a Ray Seaborn. So, the main actress's performances, I've seen her just Invincible and this. So I know of like Kim Wexler. I know the whole like the fanfare for her, but this is my time where I really got to sink in and consume a wide arc in her performance.
Yeah, sorry, I keep asking. It's sometimes a little hard to keep track of all the like who's seen what. But yeah, so a few things just to kind of note here, just something kind of fun about how the Albuquerque verse kind of works, and just kind of how something that kind of should get you excited for more Pluribus. So Tegan and I kind of had this credo on throughout Better Call Saul, and to me, I love both shows, but for me, ultimately, it's no contest. Better Call Saul, was my favorite, and easily, I think, honest, not just like person. I think there's an argument for it objectively being better than Breaking Bad. Some people might like gasp or cry sacrilege, but I think of it like this: it's from season one of Better Call Saul, they are working at like the top of Breaking Bad's game. Like Breaking Bad kind of progressively, like some shows, if you're lucky, it kind of gets better over time. And
Mhm.
by season five, they had learned all the tricks they had, getting to that point. Season five was like the artful season of Breaking Bad, where it's like they knew exactly, because they prepared for an ending. And basically the way, and this is something to kind of take note of for Pluribus as well. It's kind of a similar kind of theory in which Vince Gilligan approaches a show is that Walter White, he knew what the arc was for the character. He basically, the cell line was, I want to take Mr. Chips and turn him into Scarface, and that's essentially what Breaking Bad is.
Mhm.
And so basically when you get to the last season, you know what your ending is, and it's basically kind of like how that unfolds. And there was a plan to kind of splitting in the 2 seasons kind of thing, thanks to how AMC wanted to, they kind of like to do business by building anticipation for the final season, all that, etc. The point being, they really had a game plan with season five, and they used all the tricks they had learned up to that point. So starting with Better Call Saul, they start with kind of the season five energy of these guys really know what they're doing, and every season from there it just gets better. So it's like the most perfect version of Breaking Bad as your starting point of Better Call Saul, and then each season of Better Call Saul gets better and better and better, and that gets me really excited for Pluribus. And we're using, and so far, I mean, I know we're in our sophomore year, but it's like I got a good feeling we're using a lot of the story. We have a lot of cachet at this point. We're really, even if you know nothing of Better Call Saul, it just seems like there's a lot of really clever storytelling, especially the visual storytelling, the practical filmmaking, all the things that are the hallmarks of what you know through those shows, and like how we perfected it on Better Call Saul, going in the Pluribus, just even just from the pilot, which I love. The pilot is so strong, and this is very much like all the like we really have to sell everyone by episode one, and they do not make any bones about it. They give you a taste of what the storytelling is going to be like. Like everything's kind of there, and the way they're approaching Pluribus is like Gilligan's kind of said in this interview is that kind of like with Walter White, he's letting the character kind of define the story. In this case, Ray Seahorn working with her on Better Call Saul is basically in between, like just in between setups. Like he would kind of ruminate on the Pluribus idea while working on Better Call Saul, and just kind of kicked it around as like as kind of a flight of fantasy between episodes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd been kind of gestating for a while, and basically falling in love with how great Ray Seahorn is in the show. Basically, like, I know the X factor is I needed a protagonist, and she's what I need here, and basically she's kind of like laying the groundwork for how many, like he has no idea how many seasons this story is going to go on for. He's ballparking maybe 3 seasons, like 2 to 3 seasons.
My understanding is that he feels like it could go up to 4 seasons.
Yeah,
but he's not tied to that number. It could be less or more. I know there is a 2-season order.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah,
and they're just correct me if I'm wrong. They just started breaking the story for season 2, or they like setting up this writers' room for season 2.
Well, yeah, they've taken their time. They finished the first season, so I mean they've been plotting. I think they've been plotting at least season 2, and they're basically, I think they're kind of working up the game plan for it. They haven't like they're not filming 2 this year. They're going to take their time with it.
Yeah, because I think that's always kind of the one downside of modern television, is that especially streaming shows that have like actors that are kind of shifting between film and TV and big budgets and all that stuff. Like you don't have kind of the weekly release, which is kind of where The Pit on HBO Max is, I think, such a great show, and I think the fact that it's releasing week to week and it's kind of that one close location. But besides compare the two, I think the first season of this show, Vince Gilligan does not leave anything off the table in terms of direction, and he very much utilized that Apple budget. I have not seen a show look this good since like peak For All Mankind and like the first 2 seasons Severance. It's just so well shot. It's well, the fact that like it's kind of like a low sci-fi in the sense that there's this one idea, but you don't require huge special effects, or it's a lot of it is just having a lot of landscape shots, kind of jumping all over the world. Like people are on airplanes. You have like a diverse cast of characters all around the world speaking different languages.
We're going big without going too big, Like,
no, and I think I'm curious about what your thoughts on this, Dragon, is that it feels to me that Pluribus is the closest thing to like seeing a novel on screen. What I mean by that is that like the pace and sort of the world that's being established. Like I very much will not be surprised if little things they've seen throughout the season will have like significant payoffs in the next few seasons. Because I understand for Better Call Saul, there was a criticism that like, oh, the first one or a few seasons were slow and things kind of ratchet up. But my feeling, and I think you might agree with this, is that it's that kind of long arc view. You get a full journey and picture of like Saul Goodman, Jimmy McGill, and it's that entire journey that's the kind of magnum opus. It's kind of like you're reading War and Peace or Crime Punishment or whatever big literary novel, but it's just kind of over a set of episodes of television. And I feel like this is kind of that scale and ambition.
I mean, Better Call Saul. It's basically the whole premise. It's the tragedy of Saul Goodman. It's the rise and kind of falls, and it's almost like a Greek tragedy of sorts, which initially you don't expect going into it, but then it becomes. I shouldn't say you don't expect it per se, but I'm saying when they made it, they didn't really, they didn't expect to fall in love with Jimmy. That's why it goes on for 6 seasons. When honestly, when Better Call Saul initially was started, they weren't expecting it to go beyond the first season. That was just like the buzz and the pop. It went so well, they were allowed to kind of keep the story going. And again, it's kind of letting character define story, which is kind of been Gilligan's style for the shows, where it's
which I think it's kind of an interesting good nuance to have about making television, because I think people have had this idea for a film and TV. It's like either you're very improvisational and you just kind of go with the flow, or you have to have everything planned out and mapped out in detail, like JMS for these Babylon 5. Vince Gilligan, I think, occupies a good middle ground for creating television, where he has sort of the broad strokes, but the path to get to those broad strokes, I think he's open to improvisation and seeing how certain characters are seen by the audience, and then changing things up to maintain the overall flow, but having kind of a unique way of getting to that overall flow.
So something interesting, the storytelling for this show versus the other two that he's learning from these projects as he's going forward too. So they're not just, it's not the same, it's not rinse and repeat. Especially when we get married, it's really tricky between Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, make those shows different, given one is a prequel to the other one, but is debatably either better than or just like feeds into the other one. With Pluribus, one, there's no safety net of like, I keep saying the Albuquerque verse because it's shot in Albuquerque, and it's like we're using some similar players and stuff, and it's the same crew behind the scenes and stuff. But beyond that, again, it's like a lot of people would probably like. There's in Breaking Bad, we had like I really thought people would make a bigger deal. I'm impressed that they didn't. Like the people or the fan theory people saying, wait a minute, is Carol Strucka? Is she she Carol from the neighbor from the opener of season 5 of Breaking Bad? Like, no, come on, no. It's dumb. Anyway, she's basically called Carol as like a nod to Carol Burnett. That's real. It's wired. She's named Carol, which is cute. And there's a kind of there's an Easter egg of Carol Burnett in actually in a couple times through Better Call. So I don't want to spoil it, but it's really nice. Yeah. Anyway, Vince Gilligan, his one hang up with I think even going back to Breaking Bad, but even a little bit probably through Better Call Saul, has been like he's been trying to, knowing how big the shows are going to go over by the point that he's been doing these shows. It's like he doesn't want to spell it out to the audience, like what they should feel about characters and what opinions they should have or should be considering about characters. So what his mission statement in this show is like to circumvent that by basically leaving things a lot more up to interpretation for the audience, which is why we don't have things spelled out about the, like if it is AI, if it's not AI, like that's why it's kind of all encompassing as it is, because he's not trying to say like, what exactly we should feel about characters, where exactly they're going character wise. Because again, it's kind of like we're seeing how these characters would respond, and kind of it's almost like a Rorschach test for the audience,
Mm-hmm. I think what is interesting, I just kind of thought of this, is that one thing I kind of noticed as compared to Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul is that it doesn't utilize that much in terms of flashbacks.
Yeah, it doesn't really. That's the thing. With Better Call Saul, the most they did, and you didn't really get that far into it for me to really explain it. But let's just. Well, I'm sorry. I don't want. The further you get in Better Call Saul, there are occasions. The only time they do flashbacks are cold opens, like as far as a cold open goes, and that's not every episode or anything, but it's like very specific in the storytelling that this is information that it's not just like thrown in there. This is information that in the grand whole, it really provides great context for the events that are going on today. It's not like a whole flash. There's one, I can't say we don't do it a lot because we sprinkle it in there, and there's like one episode that is in season 1 of Better Call Saul. There is basically what I would call the Jonathan Banks Emmy episode, which is an episode called 5-0, and it's basically Mike's backstory. So that episode predominantly is flashback, but kind of integrated through the narrative of the episode. Sure. But
yeah, what am I meant to say? Like, I don't mean to disparagingly for Better Call Saul or Breaking Bad, but they do, like, Vince Gilligan definitely is someone that utilizes flashbacks as a way to kind of give character pathos, or just like, I think it really I think about like the two flashbacks that come to my mind vividly for Breaking Bad is the Walter White, looking at the chalkboard, or it's the board when he's back in the startup for Gray Matter, and then having long hair and kind of being wistful about what his future could be. And then there's the Gus Fring flashback at the pool. So these are things that are so vivid in my mind. And I imagine for Better Call Saul, it being kind of forward and back, like I kind of know the broad strokes of it. Like Vince Gilligan is utilizing kind of time, the manipulation of time and playing with our character perceptions, and informing sort of specific Chekhov's guns that kind of the triggers get pulled at key points. I think for this, I think the fact that there's not many there's only the one big flashback that I think kind of is implicitly referenced at the end of the show. But I think what's interesting is that you don't really have like a means to kind of get inside Carol's head. All what you know of Carol and her feelings is kind of what's expressed on the face of Rhea Seahorn, and then what's expressed in dialogue. So I think enables for a wide variety of interpretations and inferences. And I'm curious, like, what in your thoughts in regards to Carol? I have a particular headcanon or theory about Carol, like her personality, her background, that I think informs a lot of how she acts and thinks of herself not only as an author, but just like in the like overall arc of the show. Are you curious to hear about it, or you just kind of want to get into more of the particulars of the show?
Well, I mean, okay, real quick, I want to highlight this comment here. With LEB in the comments saying, not really subscribed to the channel for the Spoilercast because I don't watch TV. Ha ha ha. But as a Vince Gilligan fan, I watched this one and really liked it, so I thought I'd pop in. So welcome, LEB. We're going to be talking all about Vince Gilligan and all about Pluribus for this one.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'll tell you what, I do want to get into Carol, and I want to hit on I think you and I might be on the same track with the headcanon as to what her past might be, but let's I want to build on like what her premise is and then get to Carol. So let's just start there, and then we'll just kind of take it where it goes. All right?
Sure.
Okay, so again, I was head over heels for the pilot here because it feels very this pilot felt so much like the anticipation of how we knew this was going to be kind of a sci-fi show, but obviously it's not going to be a Jetsons car future, and it's going to. I was just wondering what the heck this show is going to be. So all the tension was on what this pilot was, and we get our premise. So it's a very strong pilot, and basically what we get in our premise is, I guess the long and short of it is, it's a very achievable sci-fi premise. It's very achievable, very we're not too far off from this kind of thing. And it's relevant to many things, just not one. Again, with the whole open interpretation to what are we saying about kind of our end times premise here. So basically, a frequency is picked up, essentially an alien frequency of sorts is picked up from space, and it's basically transmitting this RNA sequence, basically kind of almost like a DNA chemical kind of sequence that humanity, they try and figure it out, and in figuring it out, they create a virus, and of course, very timely. And again, it wasn't the only impetus behind it, but with the pandemic, there's another parallel which you could draw from that. But what's so eerie about it and is so well directed is the way in which a virus outbreaks. The way in which the outbreak happens. So they're experimenting on a lab on a lab rats, like
Mm-hmm.
lab mice or whatever, white rat, and it bites somebody, and I just love the real world panic of if this happens, somebody, you get them to the chemical shower and try and disinfect the wound and everything, and just it's all. But again, I just love the eerie thing that had kind of the death and rebirth that happens to the rat.
Mm-hmm.
Is what sets it all off. Just we see that, and then us just kind of poking and prodding it is basically what ends humanity.
Yeah.
So it results in this outbreak that really results in a hive mind collective consciousness thing where just again, initial outbreak just amazing, just how it just kind of it spirals, and the whole facility just they end up just licking donuts and spreading the DNA everywhere.
Yeah.
It's just so scary and instantaneous. It's a scary instantaneous version of the pandemic, and it's just terrifying. But there's also just a dark comedy to it all, that it's a plague of happiness. It's the end times with a smile slapped onto it, in a very commercialized kind of way almost.
Mm-hmm.
The most user friendly end of the world situation or alien invasion you've ever seen. And again, I like this. Again, Vince Gilligan's dealing with through a very X-Filesy kind of grounded like way in which we're doing this, where we kind of have aliens, we kind of don't. We're not seeing. We don't see where the signal came from. We're seeing how it affects the Earth. But again, it's just kind of how we would interpret this kind of invading foreign kind of thing, and I love that. Again, there's parallels to AI, there's parallels to the pandemic, there's alien invasions, there's all sorts of things you can connect to this, which again, with the whole just leaving it up to interpretation, it's just a really good idea, and I think it's such a great catch-all.
Mm-hmm.
So humanity ends, and basically we have kind of an artificial repository of knowledge beginning, amongst the kind of this collective consciousness. Licking donuts, they're crop dusting the chemical all over the place. They've spread globally, and everybody, but well, we're going to learn ultimately 13 people are affected by this thing. So that brings us to our introduction to Carol. So I love how we're introduced to Carol. I love how we have like the two concurrent things happening. We open with our whammo blammo kind of like, outbreak happens, but we haven't quite hit on, it hasn't reached Carol yet. And we see a day in the life of Carol and Ray Seahorn. Again, one of the best parts of Better Call Saul. The thing, honestly, with Ray Seahorn, and the reason Kim Wexler was such a great character, I think one of the reasons, many reasons, she was like the one flaw of Breaking Bad that, and I'm not saying it's completely justified, but I'm not saying I'm not guilty of it myself. Everybody rags on Skyler, and sometimes I think in season 2 it's justified. Everything else is like, well, we should probably cut her some slack. But the point being, Skyler White was kind of one of the weak points of Breaking Bad, and then when we do Better Call Saul, again, we're learning from our past mistakes. Kim Wexler was fascinating from start to finish. Just great layers and just got more interesting as it went on. And Ray Seahorn was kind of the X factor in that.
Mm-hmm.
So here, we see Carol. She's she's a writer. She's does like kind of the fantasy romance kind of stuff. Romantasy.
Yeah, it's the poor man too. It's basically like a genre where there's like heavy romance in a fantastical setting. It's a very popular genre nowadays. So that's what Carol's doing for the books of Carol. Swashbuckling. Male pirate, swooning a lady or whatever.
Yes, I mean, I love this. I love that she has this very, it's a very kind of active, it's very down to earth, but it's such a realistic kind of like what an author would do. You're opening at like essentially equivalents to Barnes and Nobles or off-brand Barnes and Nobles, and she's got this, she's this dry, sardonic writer. However, on the flip side, she's very good with her fans. We see like basically how Ray Seahorn would probably work a convention almost. She's very, very nice to the fans, and like, she's like inquiring like about like some guy brings like a sword to get signed, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I think also while like Carol in that moment, like she knows how to kind of play to her fans or whatever. I mean, very clearly there's a deep level of like resentment, and like she very much does not like the audience she has and where her career is at, And I think this, once we get to kind of more about my headcanon for Carol, I think it's very interesting to consider what the original bones of the show was.
Yes.
All of that, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess where to start with that. So with Carol, I think she's got demons in her past, and to me, honestly, it's kind of the read I have on kind of Carol with the fans and just kind of where we start with her is honestly, I kind of read as Carol is kind of does have her own version of happy, and because ultimately, as the show goes on, we develop in the past, kind of in the aftermath, what the relationship was with Helen. Helen is her partner and kind of her presumably like her publicist, and like as well as like her partner and just her friend and like her confidant, all these things. And I mean, it's not the greatest existence, but with Helen by her side, and obviously there were some flaws in that relationship, which we explore later on. It's not sunshiny and perfect, but the idea is that was kind of the closest Carol kind of got to happy. and she was at least contentment, it was kind of content. I mean, she wasn't like thrilled with it, like, the moment she puts on a nice face for the crowd, but aside from that, it's like,
It
she's
it
not satisfied, but she's content.
it was a tolerable existence.
Yeah, there you go. It's very, it's kind of a tolerable existence. And the idea that, kind of, I should, one of the ways I summarize the show and I summarize Carol and just how Ray Seahorn's playing her, and it's going to be, you might appreciate this. I don't know if how many other people will. I always kind of shorthand like what the premise of the show in Carol is that Carol is basically Jessica Jones navigating Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or kind of like Invasion of the Body Snatchers meets the Blip. That's kind of that's kind of what the show feels like with Carol. Carol feels there's a lot of Jessica Jones in Carol when I watch the show.
I mean, well, not just Jessica Jones, really any kind of complex female character that's like an alcohol. Like I think, like
Well, Jessica Jones is kind of popularized.
Yeah, no, like you could, like I think other examples you can also think of like Charlize Theron's character in Young Adult, or trying to think if it's like really just any sort of like indie or like well acclaimed movie that has like a lead female protagonist that's like an alcoholic. Like I think that's kind of the milieu that Carol's operating in. But I think for me, what I really find fascinating about Carol is that there, with what we know of her past, and especially what I understand. Okay, so Dragon, do you recall what was sort of the change up from when this was pitched, or the premise of the show, versus when it was made and it came out the way it is?
Okay, well, if memory serves, if you and I are thinking of the same thing in that regard, there. So initially, Vince Gilligan, when he was kind of formulating the idea, like, on and off, Better Call Saul. The initial idea was, the essentially the Diabate character that we get to later. He was kind of the initial premise. The very earliest premise was like what it was kind of like a takeoff on I Dream of Jeannie. It was kind of like, okay, what if we have the inciting invasion thing that happens, and basically if you had like this user friendly world, everyone was saying yes and trying to kind of make it. Basically, the core premise was if the world's trying to make you happy. And it was started with a male character. But originally, Carol was supposed to be a male character.
Yeah, and I want to kind of hit on that, because with the way her character starts and ends, and certain key scenes that kind of come to my mind, there is kind of a resonance if you were to have a male be in that role over the course of like those episodes. And I want to kind of elaborate on that a bit, or you want me to kind of elaborate later on when we go throughout that episode?
Let me lay out why Carol isn't the male.
Mm-hmm.
Then we'll get so basically initially, so Carol was supposed to be male, and the idea like ultimately this kind of ended up being why we have the Diabate character is basically the shadow of like what that original premise was, and kind of why it didn't work for Carol. Is that Carol was supposed to be a like kind of a male writer character who then got everything he wanted, and then with everything trying to make him happy, but then Gilligan realized, oh, wait a minute, it's going to be basically in theory, would just he would basically do what Diabate did, and then there's not really any conflict in that show for that character. And it wasn't just like a switch of like, and let's just make him female to solve that problem. It was just kind of like the thing was a character that we really need a character who is going to be like depressed and going to be fighting, not just depressed, but a character who is not going to be. He realized that happiness would kill the show, because if the character isn't severely unhappy, the show won't work. And then it just kind of like spun off into, okay, I have Ray Seahorn. I know she can really deal with this material. And how would she play this material? Well, again, she wouldn't be a happy character, and that's kind of where Carol got locked in. And then it's like, well, the shadow of like the version of that show that wouldn't have worked as like a lead, as that character being the lead, was Diabate, and that's why Diabate is kind of this fun side character in contrast to Carol. So that's where the original premise kind of went, and kind of how it evolved. Now, what do you got?
So for me, I think just the way if Carol was a man in this show, I think certain scenes would have a certain resonance. But I think the fact that Carol is who she is, for me, my headcanon, I think this is what I kind of want to bring up, is that I have the read on Carol that in light of what we know for background, she was sent to a conversion camp at a young age or whatever. she reads to me as someone that grew up with a father that wanted a son, and Carol just in her demeanor and her attitude, like she's very like male coded or mass presenting. And what I mean is that look at the fact, think of the fact in the beginning, her audience is all female, and she's writing a romantic, like a genre that's very prominent, that's very popular among female readers. And she, and in her mind, she wants to be a serious writer. There's sort of an interesting like gender expectations performance where it's like, you know, she wants to be kind of like this serious, probably male, like literary writer. And because of, her background or how she kind of came through the Vicaro series, she's kind of stuck as being like, oh, this is the female romantic writer that has like fans that are like have fanfic or swooning over. And I think also the male aspect, like her Carol having sort of like male qualities or attributes is very pronounced when Carol like hears from one of the Hive about Carol's real feelings about the Vicaro series, the latest book. Because here's why I think it's interesting for her to kind of be the male like role or figure in the couple, because because if it was a guy that was hearing all this information about their spouse kind of hiding their true feelings, it's kind of like not a cliche, but there's a certain trope that for like in male female relationships, the woman, the wife, girlfriend, whatever, will not always be 100% honest and try to kind of put on a performance or make the guy feel a lot better or more capable or whatever, just to just to kind of maintain the relationship. And I think when Carol finds out about how Helen really felt about the books, but she still put on this kind of, oh, these are great or whatever. She appealed to Carol's ego. And I think the fact that like, yes, she is a female character and there and certain things about her character that couldn't be what it is because she's female. I think the fact that like just the way she dresses is the way she kind of approaches things and her attitude, like it's very like there's a certain male quality or aspect to it that I think is going to be interesting to see how it develops and throughout the next few seasons, especially with her relationship with Sosha.
I mean, that's interesting. I didn't really consider that. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, the big takeaway I had with the conversion camp was that's, I mean, sorry, let me put it this way. So definitely it seems like the conversion camp was maybe to me was like the inciting kind of like what was like the core thing that made her unhappy in life, that she was really like, it's where there was like kind of a betrayal, I assume her parents sent her there. I think that's kind of when like a betrayal kind of set in. That's kind of why she, I think deep down it's like she can't make the pirate lady can't be pirate lady. Pirate lady has to be just the swashbuckling pirate from the White Caro series.
Yeah, no, and I think the fact there's like just if you take the gender out, like serious like alcoholic writer that wants to aspire to more, like that in my mind, like that's kind of coded as like male. Like think of like the stereotype for like literary authors that are like serious and kind of put their nose up against like populist or popular genres. It's often like an older male guy, and I feel like Carol kind of has the energy. And I think that's kind of makes her relationship or like similarities with Mancuso's really interesting. They're basically kind of the same person. This very, strong-willed, independent, contrary, like willing to kind of, be the person to, push against the crowd. Because I don't know if you kind of think much about this, is that socially, like for both male and female, like men are kind of socially cultured to like be independent or push the envelope, willing to debate, and women are just kind of socially conditioned to kind of be people pleasers. Not to say that's every man or every woman are like that, but that's kind of social expectations. But with Carol, how she acts, it's like she doesn't act in sort of the way that what is socially acceptable or socially taught for women.
Carol very much fires from the hip.
Yeah, and I think if you kind of put her in a man, it's kind of it's like if Carol was a man in that scene, especially when she's interacting with the like all the other people,
Yeah.
she kind of would be like the stand-in for like the like cowboy American, get the government away from my guns or whatever. And the fact that Carol's a woman, it adds an interesting wrinkle to it, and I think that kind of complexity plays even further when we get into Sosha and her and like kind of their relationship dynamic.
Yeah. So I mean, with I throw the Jessica Jones comparison not just for the alcohol. I mean, admittedly, at surface level, that was kind of the cute kind of shorthand. Like, well, she's kind of acting like Jessica Jones would, like hard drinking and very much kind of like kind of rebelling against this whole. She's going against the current on this one. She's justifiably upset. But I mean, I think it's kind of a combination of things. It's just it's the alcoholism, it's the hard nose kind of like kind of the attitude. She has traumas in her past. She's got some some seated issues there. She's faced. We see her in the midst of a trauma. Here with the loss of Helen, the very traumatic loss of Helen, being surviving this kind of invasion. Um, kind of in the midst of this invasion of body snatchers esque kind of situation. But it's also the idea that there are layers there, and there is like a good she has a noble intent. She's trying to save the world here, and but again, in kind of a brass tacks kind of like hard swing kind of way here, where she's really just she's cutting the brass tacks, and that is kind of costing her some buddies and some allies in her endeavor here. So I think there's kind of a I don't know. I saw a lot of parallels to how Jessica Jones would handle a crisis like this, but also just kind of
And I think more to that, it's like I do appreciate that. I don't think for me the AI interpretation or read of the show is super strong because in my mind, are we to suggest that like is AI something that just spreads around, everyone's using it, and for those that aren't using it, they feel alive and human? Because in my mind, I feel like with the way the show is, maybe it's just kind of a more universal reading that's been applicable across all forms of science fiction. I think, especially with the fact that Vince Gilligan, I don't know, for many people, they might not know this, is that he kind of, you know, started his career kind of, cutting his teeth in doing television, and specifically one of the big things was X-Files.
Mm-hmm.
And for the X-Files, that's a show that's specifically unique to the cultural zeitgeist in the 90s, because the 90s you have a lot of like popular culture that focuses on challenging the man, questioning the man, very individualistic, conspiratorial. That's where conspiracy theories kind of come about, both in real life and in popular culture. And I think this kind of and I think for Carol, I think this shows very interesting to say, like, okay, what does it mean for a character that's so individualistic, so focused upon getting what they want, what they need, regardless of whatever other people feel? How do they then operate in a world where they maybe slowly realize that their individualism, their belief that I could do anything on my own or should do everything on my own,
she's a very self-reliant character.
Yeah. There's like how practical is that? Because I think over the course of the show, I think Carol kind of realizes that even prior to like the hive come into play, her life wasn't always so self-directed. It's not like there were things that were made accommodated to her, especially from her own partner. And I think that over that course, her realizing that her prior life wasn't so different, and not to the same degree, but just there was like Carol, I think, realized like, okay, I wasn't just someone that was making my way through the world and getting to decide what my life was. Other people, because they loved me, cared about me, or liked me, accommodated and made themselves smaller or did things for me, and realized how much my life was made by others. And I think that kind of leads that, and the isolation leads her to make the decisions that she makes near the end of the show. I mean, up to like not absolutely the near end, but like where she goes with Zosha in the relationship.
She definitely goes on an arc, and kind of definitely like she learns a lot about herself, I think, from episode, from I guess the end of episode 1 to ultimately episode 9. So
yeah,
I know it's kind of spelling out the obvious there, but I mean,
yeah, I think that's the thing. It's like I think it would be so simple minded for it to be like, oh, collective organization, help or whatever is bad, individualism is good. And I feel like Vince Gilligan is a much smarter, more nuanced writer to not take that position. And I think he's able to articulate through the characters, through the situations that occur throughout the show, what value there is to have sort of individuality, heterogeneous cultures, heterogeneous lives. And I think when Makusis comes to play, and especially I think the last episode with the way that starts with that one girl in the village, there's an interesting dimension to not just be individualism versus collectivism, but also like cultural homogeneity. like the unique like subcultures that get subsumed by this hive mentality, especially indigenous cultures.
Right. So, just again with the inciting incident itself, just again with the classic, just how the Albuquerque verse kind of shoots things, just the harrowing disaster oneer of just like the global standing seizure effect, which is just so creepy and eerie, and just the idea that what dooms Helen is the fact that she happened to fall, and it's the idea of like almost like Olive. I'm just gonna use the blip as like comparison. It's the idea that what you were doing, during the disaster, or some things, it's kind of unfortunate bad luck of like what you were doing at the time of the incident. So it's the idea that like, and I love this is, and just to show you, it's like if anyone embodies, we always call it the Brad Bird philosophy. I mean, I think it's a Native American philosophy that Brad Bird popularized. But it's the idea that, it's we use every part of the buffalo. If anyone embodies the use every part of the buffalo kind of philosophy, I think it's Vince Gilligan, because like we don't waste anything here. Everything is like feeding into the stories. The idea that seeing Helen fall, which ultimately kills her.
Mm-hmm.
800 is a big point in the first two episodes, especially the second episode, where we add numbers and figures to it. 886 million people, were not lucky, and they died because they were in the middle of things during this mass seizure event. And then Carol, when she upsets him, to me the headiest idea in the whole thing, I'm still geeking out about, just in terms from a storytelling perspective, is that Carol, she basically I guess in quotes, she kind of upsets the AI. She upsets the high. She argues with the artificial kind of response thing. I know it's not technically an AI or an artificial, but it's like arguing with your computer almost. She argues with the collective,
Mm-hmm.
and basically kills 11 million people. I mean, that's shocking. That's like that the unfathomable guilt that you as a person would have. That always struck me so hard. Like, oh my god, just like because you called them out, and she kind of like lost her, like understandably lost her temper, and just arguing with the machine, so to speak.
Yeah,
11
but
million people die. That's not her. But
but it's also interesting thematically, like how like for the collective to survive, you kind of have to sublimate or like push down any individual dissent.
yeah.
And that Carol, like with her individual dissent, it caused kind of the whole machine to break down. I think there's a lot to kind of say in terms of like society as a whole. And I think when we get to see all the other characters that haven't been affected, the fact that like Carol's the one American and everyone else is from, you know, India, China, Japan, basically Asian countries. And I think I think if there's one little criticism, minor critique, I kind of wish I got to see, I wish I would like to see or hear these characters talk more about what their lives were like, because I think for Carol, she's very much someone that, like, she lives out her philosophy of being individualistic, and decrying collective, like the whole thing about how she sees her fans as being this one collective high men that don't think for themselves, aren't critically thinking, all that stuff. It'd been interesting for me, whether through dialogue, flashbacks, or whatever, or maybe it's something we can see more in future seasons.
I
How
really think season 2 is going to explore the other
no,
survivors.
I totally get that, and I think for me, I think there is still some level of an argument. I think Debate, for as much as he's a very comedic, like not high, like very out there kind of a guy, for all intents and purposes, even though what he's doing has very gray area concerns in regards to consent of it all, which I
Yeah.
think also the fact that Carol
I really like how they get into that. Like the question is like it's in the room. You can kind of feel it in the room about the
yeah,
whole.
but the thing is, Carol it becomes part of that gray area by the end of the season,
Yeah.
and it really makes you kind of wonder. It's like what makes one moral versus just what makes it easy to like stick up to your morals, right? And I think for Carol, the fact that was it weak or stronger for her to last 2 months and then go where she did with Zosha in the relationship, right?
Yeah. Wait, are you asking me, or you want to like?
Well, I mean, I'm asking both. Yeah.
Honest, with Carol, we'll probably get into this a little bit more later, but I mean, so they kind of hit on this a little bit here. I think there is a difference between Carol and Zosha and Diabate and just everybody.
Mhm.
I think the difference there is that Diabate was like probably so Vince Gilligan he joked like with the initial like the factor. I love Vince Gilligan so much. As a creative I love hearing that. I love the comment. I just binge the commentaries on Better Call Saul. I'm still gonna have a really good time. He's delightful.
Mhm.
And self-deprecating is a lot of like he bases all these amazing people around him. He's just basically getting he says something, eats a hot dog from the craft service to that kind of thing. Anyway, so in the initial when Carol was a man, it was basically like if you put a man in the in this situation, it basically said the show would be over in like 5 minutes because it's like well it's going to have all his whims and then basically turn to porn. That's basically how we summarized it, and we basically see that with Diabate. Where Diabate, it's kind of like a fantasy. It's a James Bond fantasy camp, and he can have all.
He's a hedonist, yeah.
Yeah, he's very hedonistic lifestyle, and I get the sense that it was based on kind of like not only based on what Gilligan's joke about this kind of the formation. If we just had kind of like what the male instinct might be in
Yeah.
this situation, it's that ultimately I don't. The take I have on Diabate is that he was probably maybe more of like a shy, just kind of, if not even shy, just he was kind of more of a nobody, kind of a shy, just kind of an average Joe, maybe like kind of a nerdy kind of guy, who knows. And then this happens, and to him, he's looking at glass half full. He's won the lottery, anything he's ever kind of thought of, or anything he could ever want. And it probably didn't take him long to do that. And the fact that we've already established he's done this with many people already by episode 2 when we first introduced to him. Like by the end of that, so it seemed like Diabate was like it wasn't really he didn't consider it a lot before. Because only if we have one of the great things with the show we should actually mention with all of this. We have like not just the ticking clock, but we have like the way we measure time at the pretty much the top of every episode. We kind of can track like how much time is passing, which I really liked. So we kind of know like not a lot of time has passed, like barely like a week has passed. However, it's a big global kind of traumatic event, so people are going to be put through it, as we see with Minusos.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting for Diabate as a character is that I think I would not be surprised. I think for the characters that are more acclimated to the post Hive world, I mean, these are characters that are from Asia. These are like a lot of Asian countries, particularly more collectivist than individualist. Because I think like for example, the United States, it's like there's sort of a value in kids when they are 18, they go out on their own, like make their way in the world. And whereas Asian culture is like everyone, like there's like multiple generations of family living in the same house or place or whatever. That kind of collective organization, sharing of resources, all that stuff. So I think for a lot of those characters that are not really with Carol on, fighting against this hive mind, it's like, well, this is kind of the ultimate affirmation of what they've been culturally raised. And maybe I wouldn't be surprised if for a lot of these characters, maybe they were in situations where very few people were like socially oriented. Like maybe for some like Diabate, I can imagine he'd be in a part of Mauritania or just he lived his life where it was like every person now for themselves, and he was yearning for like a more collective social, or like whether that's like for his own self needs or desires for others. Like I think it'd be interesting to kind of complicate this where for a lot of other people they might have gone their dream world with the hive coming in. Maybe for people that just had to scrounge by and have to survive on their own with this high resource, they could have their needs met and don't have to worry about making ends meet or living the next day.
Yeah, I mean, with the premise of time as well with this and the ticking clock is that I mean we can have examined ticking clock through many veins, some literal, some none. Big thing is that again, there. I mean, this isn't specifically the only reason there's a ticking clock because we're just trying to measure time. But I mean, just based on kind of the plot here, they have months or however long it takes them to find out basically to cure in their minds, cure and basically infect the people who have a built-in immunity for again for interesting plot reasons have immunity, but um, like the 13 immune people. So there's a matter of months. So in that sense, the Abate's thinking, well, I mean, I got a few months of free will left, or however much long I got, so why not? which I mean is kind of fair. He's like I mean, I don't think he's quite looking in a negative sense. He's just looking at like, well, I mean, there's no consequences here. I mean, at the end of the world, I mean, things are going kind of well. You know,
Yeah,
it's
and also I think there's something that I feel like it's interesting that it hasn't been fully answered, fully explored. Is that if you take the hive minds out of the bodies, like, is the person that occupied that body still there, or is it just an empty husk?
well, that is a very good question that we kind of explore very briefly towards the end of the season with Minusos when he tries to break the the hive mind control in there. Now, do you remember if the person said anything for the brief moment he was testing his
No,
frequency?
we were just kind of shuddering. Like I imagine like it was still that hive mind just trying to keep control of the body. And it was a lot of stress because of the radio frequency. But I didn't feel. I feel it was left. I feel it was made ambiguous that we didn't know whether or not the person that was Ryan the was
Yeah.
was there. And I feel like that's going to be a really interesting wrinkle to cut. Like, because the thing is, if there's still people there, then I think both Carol and Debate are kind of looked in a really bad light if they're essentially kind of violating people's consent if those people are still there. If those people still there, like, are they really violating like consent? Like, you get that's kind of where like science fiction really plays with sort of the ethical dilemmas because, for example, in Jessica Jones with Purple Man, like these people are still themselves.
Yeah.
They just had their autonomy taken away, literally forcefully, and they're just basically the analogy is like the
There's a
like
mental violation
no,
that's
no,
going.
no, no, but specifically the analogy I always remember it's like they're in the car but they're not in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
And so we don't know whether the person's even in the car.
I look, but again, you're right. We don't know yet. Again, I'm not going to say there's like a plan, but these are things they're exploring right now. They're figuring out. But the way my theory, just based on what we have so far, mainly based a lot of it based on that scene. My theory is that the they're locked away. They're in there. They're not aware. I don't think they're aware of what they're doing. They can probably maybe feel it, or they would kind of grasp it if they were cured. And I think I don't know if it would sink in. I don't think it would just like they would have been helpless or tortured. I mean, it's possible they could go that route. I don't know. I'm just saying. To me, it feels like there was such just given. It feels like there was a stronghold by by the hive mind, by the collective. It feels like they are very much like they're fully in control of that body, and there's no like we're not switching on and off. I just think there's like such a total control that they are just like if they were to be reawakened, they have been like really deep. They might have been like completely asleep in the body if they were to come back online. Otherwise, as far as the collective is concerned, the person is not there, or they are buried so deep down they will not come up.
I think it would be the interesting wrinkle is that, or in industry, but I think it would be interesting is that because the thing is, if they're not there, then I think there's like such a dark, depressing ending for that show.
Yeah.
But if they're there, it can be interesting. It's like, oh, they took the hold and they're still there, but that the more time it goes by, the less that person is because like here's my thing. It's like let's say a person comes back to their body, like they're free from the hive. Like it'd be very interesting if maybe they're not fully 100% themselves. Maybe there's amnesia. Maybe they don't are able to operate or do any like a portion of their like motor controls or whatever. Because I think that kind of makes an interesting wrinkle because if truly all the people that were in the hive bodies formerly are gone, they're never coming back. Like the hive just is destroyed or eliminated, the body just dropped down. That's a very sad and dark, depressing ending to think about. But they're there, and there's like a ticking time clock for like, hey, for like past this amount of time, they're gone. I think is likely the route for Gilligan to take because then that pushes like Carol and Minusos like into really pushing the like envelope and getting the pedal rolling and freeing as many people as possible and as
Well,
fast as possible.
that's the thing with the husk thing. I mean, they're all accessing the memories of people, so presumably the brain function is there. Which I mean, clearly there's they're trying to sustain human bodies. So it's a living body, clearly. But I'm saying with that in mind, it makes me think that minds and memories and stuff. It's kind of like it's almost like this is gonna be a really weird place to kind of take. It's kind of like Del Toro's examination of like the soul and kind of what he does in like the new Frankenstein movie and everything. I mean, it's not just the new Frank. In a lot of his work, he examines like the soul and where like life really comes from and all that kind of
Well,
stuff. And I don't, you know.
because I think when you, I mean, I haven't really gone too deep into neuroscience, but I think there's kind of an interesting thing about how like you still like for example, people that have amnesia, they still are they're still like a person. They just don't have like any recollection of what they did prior
Yeah,
to amnesia, right? So I think it can still make sense that a person may not be there, but their memories, it's kind of like stored like software or whatever. Like there's like or like they're the hard there's hard I don't know, I'm trying to I don't know how the computer analogies work, but basically like a brain can still have, you know, memories, but being a person, being a sense of self, this is getting to like philosophy stuff, is more than just having memory, right?
yeah.
And so that's kind of where, you know, like is it something where like yeah, that's oh, man, that's just so
It's
that's I
pretty,
think
it's trippy, right?
yeah, because the thing is the like if they try to access the memories and they are typically what feelings they have, they just kind of have like a it's like you just your brain is just kind of like a library. And the librarian, the person that kind of sifts through the memories, makes kind of independent decisions, like either not there or is like imprisoned. So I'm really curious to where to what the answer is, whether or not the people that were high of control are there still.
Anyway, so just to kind of backtrack a little here. So okay, so the joining, the big, kind of the transformation, the invasion. It's very eerie again. The whole, the seizure effect. It gets very well shot. Just Carol just like being in a panic, trying to get Helen to a hospital and everything, and it's just not. It's just it's not going well for her. So you take this very self-sufficient, kind of prickly writer, and you throw her into essentially the basically the end times of humanity to a degree, and not end times in terms of the world's going to blow up, but the end times of like, well, everyone's kind of gone, kind of.
Like I Am Legend or the Stand or you know, but
Yeah,
really any apocalypse show where there's just desolation.
yeah, but it's a very basically it's like the end times of humanity, but it's with a very user friendly smile. One could say, it's the foundation being it's you know you're like the foundation of like where we have Carol at the start of the story and where we're kind of the mountain that the hive mind is trying to climb with Carol is that um, we have somebody who's immune to our charms, essentially. At least with somebody who is you know our invasion killed the one person she loved, the one person she cared about, loved and loved her back, and all this stuff. And like that's the mountain they're gonna have to climb to get her to. She's firmly against from the start of the season. She's firmly against the collective. I just want to highlight this too. I just love like in the first episode we established the whole, we have like the president talking to her over the phone, and this whole, this was like the viral marketing there where you actually if you call the numbers that are from the show that you actually get to talk to, like you hear you hear like somebody saying, Carol, we'd like to hear, they're talking to Carol on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And also, this is a trailer they put out. All pretty much all the Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad like all stars they kind of called in as like the collective, and it's like this cute little. It's not in the show, but it's it's something they kind of did as like a trailer, like a little marketing thing. It's adorable. The carryover was we have Patrick Fabian, who is from Better Call Saul. He is the pre-recorded message when Carol can alienates him for a bit. So that's that he's from Better Call Saul.
I see.
Patrick Fabian. So that's kind of a fun little like he's the one who says, "Hello, Carol. We need a little space right now, but just leave a
Oh
message."
man,
That's him.
I because I remember I've seen clips of like all like all the various characters in Better Call Saul, and man, I should have just clocked that in because
You
that
want to hear something really cute?
what.
They surprised her with that. She did not know that was the voice that was going to be on the
Oh,
phone.
really? That's
Now
neat.
she didn't break when they did the initial take of that, so I wonder if it actually made it into the show. I forget if it actually if it actually made it into the end result because like after the take was done, was that Patrick? It's just yeah.
Wow. God, I guess I was so like floored by the John Cena cameo. That one is
Okay, well we'll get the John C. Don't talk about John C. We'll get there.
good.
Okay, just remember it. Um, but yeah, so again, production wise, as with all this, speaking of just kind of the other talent, again, man, it just goes to show you because traditionally the way they done it, this is actually something brand new they have not done before, at least to this extent. The way it worked through Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul is, they would shoot in locations in Albuquerque and like the homeowners and stuff, and it would just be, like they would that's how they got to access the locations. And it's in the Albuquerque and Albuquerque versus the tax incentives. Apparently, it's cheaper and really it's better to shoot in Albuquerque.
Yeah, no, and I think the location being so desolate and just kind of out of the open, it emphasizes the very like isolation and alienation that Carol's feeling.
So here's the different thing. Before, that's how they did it. Now, when they did this show, Carol's neighborhood, the suburbs that Carol lives in,
Yeah.
completely fabricated, not a real neighborhood.
Oh wow.
I know, pretty impressive. At least from the way they've described it. That's kind of the facades and everything. It's really good though.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes sense considering the amount of damage that those houses incurred.
Exactly. That's the thing. They couldn't do it to real. Ordinarily, they would, because a lot of people thought, myself included, I thought Carol's house might have been Hank's house from Breaking Bad, but I was wrong. It was just it's yeah.
Oh man, you should see Ellie's comment. I'm very curious if that's true.
Uh, huh. That oh man, I that one. I'm trying to remember the exact scene. I don't. That it's possible it could have been Tony Dalton. That is. So Ellie B in the comments says, "Unless I'm misinformed, the person who answers the phone from Nusos is Tony Dalton." Now I don't. At the end of the season, when Nusos takes off, I don't think he gets a call. I think this is like earlier on when he's like they're calling him on the phone trying to get him to like
Yeah.
that. I didn't. I don't know because I think he was speaking another language, right? I don't think he was like subtitles. I probably didn't catch it.
No. I mean, it was speaking Spanish, obviously, in an instance.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, so I think I didn't recognize.
No, I guess you wouldn't know if it was Tony Dalton unless he's like saw the credits.
Yeah, that's the thing. So I had no idea if that is him or not. If so, it was really clever in my head. That's amazing if that is him.
Yeah,
love that.
mm-hmm.
Anyway, so also the here's something too. So another thing they tried to correct, and another reason for the way they built the neighborhood was they wanted to avoid the unfortunate pizza thing that happened. So the homeowners for the White House, they call it, for Walter White's house, Breaking Bad, because of the pizza throw, people will almost do Breaking Bad tours and everything. They'll go inside the RV, and this isn't just the RV tours, but I'm just saying in general, people will visit the site of the shooting locations.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, after Breaking Bad, people would go to Walter White's house, and they would to the late is like it was a nice couple, this lady who owned like Walter White's house, and unfortunately people would throw pizzas on the roof, and this poor little old lady would climb the ladder and have to clean the pizza off her own roof again and again and again and again. So they had to make a lot of public search, like, hey, no, don't do that. Like Jonathan Banks hilariously would threaten to shoot people who did it. Love it. And so that's one of the reasons we have a fake neighborhood. But in addition to that, the way where they shoot next to like an Air Force base. So I think it's next to an Air Force. The point being, apparently, when you shoot with drones, there is like you could get I forget if it's arrested or not, but you can get in serious trouble like if you fly a drone, because a drone's like it's like an airspace violation if you fly drones there. Like their drones are permitted when they shoot, but it's like if people want to do like an equivalent to a pizza throw, they want to use it, fly drones around that area. There is like they're warning people like not to mess around in like Albuquerque and like fly drones everywhere because
Yeah,
they are
no,
susceptible to.
I totally get that. That'd be such a constant annoyance, but
Yeah, apparently there's like an airspace law, so there's kind of like if you
no,
yeah,
because like drones are it's like they're under the purview of like the FAA, I think.
Yeah, the FAA, yeah, that's
because I remember watching like there's like the one cop show, not the Rookie 911, where I think someone mentioned that like, hey, like, oh, I was flying a drone, whatever. It's like, well, do you have a license with the federal AAA or whatever? So I get that. God, I'm just trying to think for what do you think of Manusos in terms of his character and just like how he what his opposition is to the Hive taking over versus like Carol's, because I think
So,
you can do distinction.
sorry.
Oh, you go ahead.
I think Manusos is fascinating. He's a fascinating character. I think we've kind of scratched the surface on him. He must have a doozy of a backstory, and I can't wait to explore that in future seasons. But from what we were presented with, so Manusos to me is like the big long con payoff that again. So as you can kind of see, even though the episode 2, which is going back to episode before we really get, I know we introduced the Manusos in episode 2, but let's just tabling that for a second.
Yeah.
Just there are long con openings, and just kind of like Vince Gilligan loves a slow burn, and his slow burns always pay off, which unlike a lot of other slow burns and other things. So this is like, for example, when Zosha's introduction, like the random lady from another country gets on the plane, she gets cleaned up and all that, the long thing, their payoff is like the lengths of which the collective is going to go to get Carol, to get on Carol's good side, as well as, we saw like the dead bodies being collected, which is kind of a setup for the HTP thing. So nothing is wasted, and all that is kind of going towards something. And with Manusos, that's kind of like the season long kind of version of that, where this guy, to me, from a storytelling perspective, Manusos is set up for the finale. He is set up for, we're going to confront Carol with the most extreme version of what her perspective was on the collective. Basically, Carol, her arc through the season is she ultimately is making compromises from the individualist thinking to kind of the collective thinking, and she's not like completely with the collective. She almost goes there for a little bit, but it's the idea that she's been kind of swayed through the season through understandable means and methods, and like the idea that we kind of saw on her own, like completely separated when we take them away from her, like all the other people are taking, when she's basically being served via drones and everything. It kind of drives her. It kind of drives her a little off the deep end. It kind of like, at least it makes her depression a lot more severe, and she almost kills herself with fireworks, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So she needs humanity in some form, and she settles for it. Now, Manusos is basically Carol without any compromises at all, at least as much as he can humanly make to the brink, almost putting him to the brink of death.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. So I thought that was fascinating, and I love that was their end game. And I kind of saw the pieces coming, like when Carol was starting to bond with Joshua, I saw, oh my God, Manusos is on the way, and he's been getting the save humanity messages and the whole let's work on this, stopping this conspiracy together. And he is. We said this guy is a static character. He is not. He's changing physically from the traumas that he's enduring, but he is not.
He's uncompromising.
He is uncompromising, and that's the whole point of his character. Now, the reason why is the big that's the question mark I'm fascinated by. Like, how does a guy end up like that? He is like to the point where the runner of the IOUs with this guy. This guy is so uncompromising, not just in the. You get a sense this is kind of how the guy's life has been up to this point. He does not entirely, he's not eating cat food up to this point. But it's the idea that this guy is not just self-sufficient. He very much is, his whole identity is defined by nothing is for free, everything is earned kind of a mentality, right?
Yeah, and I think there's two interesting reads on it. One, I think, is like, which country is Manusos?
He's in Paraguay now. The actor, I'm not sure if this is going to sound terrible. I don't think he's not Paraguayese. He's not Paraguayan?
Paraguayan or Paraguayan, yeah.
So I don't think, I could be wrong. I want to say the thing with him is that I could be thinking of Diabate, because Diabate was kind of a similar thing.
Diabate's Mauritania.
Well, I'm not saying I'm saying Diabate was a thing where he was, what was Diabate again?
Mauritanian.
So that thing, he's Mauritanian, but I don't know if
No, the actor is specifically Mauritanian.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So the actor is that, but it's I think Diabate was in a different place though, despite that's what his nationality. So I forget if they did something like that with Manusos. Manusos he's in Paraguay, but he's speaking Spanish.
No, well,
is he?
Yeah, he speaks Spanish. Yeah,
I think so. He's speaking Spanish, and he's in Paraguay. I forget which one. Either Diabate or Manusos had like a switch like that, where the actor is one nationality, but he's in a different location. They're kind of. Yeah, so I forget which. Yeah.
Wait, so you're saying the actor and the character are two different nationalities, or that the character is based in one country of a different
Yeah,
nationality?
that's what I'm saying. Like the character was from a different country while being a different nationality. The character itself, and the actor also happens to be the same nationality as the actor is the same nationality as the
Okay,
character, but
so
they're in a different location.
you're correct, Dragon. So Manusos, he lives in Paraguay, but he's Colombian.
That's it. That's what I was thinking. Okay.
Yeah, because I have to look into like Latin American history for all the different nations because I'm wondering if because for Paraguay, Colombia, if either of those two countries like had like because like for Argentina, no, for Chile, you have Pinochet, who was a very conservative, capitalistic, dictator and all that stuff. So I'm kind of wondering for Manusos, like depending upon his depending upon what sort of history for either Paraguay, Colombia, if like he comes from more conservative, traditional, capitalistic kind of a way. So that's why he has like, oh, nothing is free, everything's earned. Like maybe it's like because in Latin America there's a lot of like history of socialist dictatorships. So I think that kind of dynamic plays with like him like really valuing the sense of property ownership. You don't take things by force, you pay for them and all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
The other read, and I think this is kind of interesting read, especially with like what happens at the beginning of the finale. So you remember the little girl that's in that like village
Yeah, yeah,
in America? So when the hive kind of does this like the performance traditional dance for that village, and then she becomes part of the hive mind, they all just stop doing that cultural dance. And I think there's an interesting commentary, like for regards to Manusos, is that he sees the hive as like a colonizing force, and that accepting the hive is basically accepting cultural genocide. And I think that's kind of an interesting read, like for someone from his background, especially with sort of Latin America's history of like colonialism and like differing nationalities that are made from assimilation, integration, all that stuff. So I've heard that for me that was kind of an interesting thing to kind of in my mind perk up, and I'm curious for how further that gets developed when Manusos, along or the other thing or both in conjunction.
I just love the Manusos. He's been on. He goes on this odyssey, and it's the idea that in this. So I love where it starts. Like it's basically kind of a screw you with Carol on the phone because he thinks she's one of them trying to call. He basically thinks he may or may not be Tony Dalton, like calling him on the phone. And he just thinks it's like a kind of basically the equivalent of like a solicitor that is the collective just trying to sway him, and he's just very hesitant. And like, the first one just like bites back at him. He's like, "Wait a minute, now." It's not. I don't want to call it. It's not a plot hole, but I'm sure a part of me does wonder, like, well, Manusos. Well, actually, like, there's kind of a solution there. Initially, I'm thinking, well, Manusos, why don't you call back? But then I realized, well, okay, well, he hasn't learned the language yet. But then again, well, he knows Carol speaks English because then she tried a little bit of Spanish and that to insult him.
I I
So
I I figured because he's so paranoid about the hive being always watching.
right, and he
He
doesn't
just
want the
never
call
trust like
traced.
any sort of communication that isn't face to face isn't already being surveyed or observed by the hive, which is why he wanted the phone. Which is why he wanted Carol to be without the phone.
Mhm.
She needed the phone to communicate and
He
translate.
wasn't thinking about airplane mode, and even so, look, frankly, the vitamin says I wouldn't trust the airplane mode thing either. I wouldn't like throw a lady's like phone in the sewer though. It's just kind of mean, but
Yeah, no. Also, you know what makes Carol Manuso's two sides of the same coin?
what?
They probably, and I'm wouldn't be surprised if Carol like it's so they have complicated relationships with their parents, and specifically
Yep.
because remember Manusos
He hates his mother.
yeah, my mom was a bitch, and it's like okay, there's a lot, and you know what's interesting? The fact that they're both individualistic and have those kind of backgrounds, like, is there something to be said about how for people that have that kind of upbringing where they just have felt the sort of you know the worst impacts of like an authority figure, specifically a parent, does that kind of enculture someone to be so individualistic, so rebellious, so like anti-authority?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's it's kind of the Nietzsche thing, or the joke people make about Nietzsche is that like God is dead. It's like, well, you see God as a father figure, and he had abusive father figure, then yeah, you especially would want him dead or whatever. So it's kind of funny to kind of maybe like how much of Carol and Manuso's like history are they projecting onto their interactions with the hive, and to see as just another authority figure that they're afraid of being subsumed or abused by.
Okay, so real quick, I just want to shout these guys out here. So with the Albuquerque verse crew, so basically the reason this show is so good, Rohit,
Mhm.
is that the directors and writers, as well as many of the other guys who are like all on the production, but the carryovers from all throughout Breaking Bad and especially Better Call Saul, most of the Better Call Saul crew, which basically also included most of the Breaking Bad crew, so it's basically the Better Call Saul crew. We had Gordon Smith, writing and directing some episodes here. And of course, Gordon Smith, he was basically the heavy hitter writer on Better Call Saul because his sister was a lawyer, so he had like a lot of legalese. He was pretty much the legal consultant on Better Call Saul because of that.
Yeah.
Because he did his research and everything. Don't get me wrong, they all did research. I'm just saying Gordon Smith had the closest in with the legalese. But point being, Gordon Smith was a very talented writer. He wrote the 5-0 episode, which is Mike's backstory in Better Call Saul, which again basically is like it's Jonathan Banks' swan song in terms of he only had one Mike episode, like to say everything he needs to say about the character. It's pretty much that episode.
Mhm.
But anyway, so Gordon Smith he wrote and directed, which I forget if he's directed. I know he I forget if he eventually directed some Better Call Saul episodes. I think he at least did one or two, and then so the point being him stepping up to direct like this, really good for him. Adam Bernstein, who was way back during Breaking Bad during the initial, like, the big three episodes that kind of sell you. He was a very early director, so Adam Bernstein's a biggie.
Mhm.
He's got a pedigree there. Allison Tatlock and Gene Carroll. So Gene Carroll is actually Vince Gilligan's assistant, who basically kind of was with him throughout all of the Albuquerque verse, and she had brought really good writing ideas, and so she had kind of worked her way up to full on writing and like the episodes. So this was good for her. I just want to highlight those guys.
That I appreciate that, Dragon, because I think especially nowadays, I think sort of I don't know for any people who follow up behind the scenes or really pay attention to sort of the industry for film and television, especially for television. A lot of the big showrunners that people are aware of or are fans of, like Vince Gilligan, Damon Lindelof, Shonda Rhimes, whoever, they cut their teeth working on network shows or cable shows or whatever. And now with streaming, with the fact that like you'll have a season and then maybe 2 or 3 years later you'll have the next season and there not being a lot of continuity. So a lot of writers just coming up. It's really hard for anyone to really cut their teeth, build their talent, build their craft to be of a level that they can pitch to a network or a streaming service and be able to have their own show and be their own Vince Gilligan or David Lindelof. So I appreciate for Vince Gilligan, not only is it good for him to have talent that he can rely on, but I think it's also good for any of the writers that have been on Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul for this, and directors as well to cut their teeth, to build their craft, to be on a level that they can be their own Vince Gilligan down the line. So I'm very excited. This is a quality show made by quality people, so I'm hoping. For Vince Gilligan to come from X Files to this, I'm hoping for someone to have the same journey for this show as well as Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad.
Yeah. All right. So with Ray Seahorn's acting, the way in which the whole grieving Helen stuff goes, I love all the little touches, and this is what I live for in the Albuquerque verse, just in terms of like the quality of the writing. Is the idea? It's all about the little things and how we can visually convey the story. And it's the idea we see very good acting of Carol internalizing the loss, and she's very defensive about Helen, like really drawing a hard line to the collective, like you have off limits on Helen, and she kind of lays a trap for him to see it, kind of test him on that, and about them, like still referencing Helen and stuff, despite her saying no, and so she's trying to see how honest these guys are, and the ultimate realization is that they can't lie, which is a big, it's a big benefit to her in the story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she see again I love like Carol almost kills herself practically trying to bury Helen in the backyard, trying to dig the grave, and then basically she's dehydrating herself, and I love that Zosha is like saying, well, no, you're gonna look at Carol, you really got to stay hydrated here, and like defiantly, like she's like spilling the bottle of water and everything. And of course, we parallel this with Manusos later on, with like the whole like they're pleading with him, please don't go into the gap, do not go into the gaps, like the what was it the Darien Gap, I think somewhere in Paraguay, or at least somewhere on the between Paraguay and going to Albuquerque. So it's like the point being, that was like the very dangerous like path of jungle he had to traverse, and they're pleading with him, please don't go. There's like spikes that are like this big on trees, and so this is the idea. There is a very user friendly, like, hey, this is kind of dangerous. Can you not do that?
Yeah.
So just the little touches of like, like Carol is just like she's really, throwing herself into like, she's kind of it here's but again, I'm bringing that up because it's also, Carol is kind of attempting to be Medusos, but ultimately she can't do it. And again, you can't fault her for that. She's making compromises, but very real believably in a ways like, well, again, despite her best effort, she can't dig the hole. So you're going to have the person who can operate like the little, mini digger.
Well, I mean, part of it's also where they're based, right? Because where Carol's at, like New Mexico,
volcanic soil, and
yeah, I mean, it's not an area that you can really survive out of your own. Like
they've always joked every time they shoot in Albuquerque, it'll kill you if you're not strong enough. It'll like the desert,
no,
the wind, the winds.
yeah, it's like Australia in the U.S. But
Yeah.
no, I think for and whereas Paraguay, like he's in the city. He's not like kind of in a suburb that's like away from like the city center, right? So, and also I think like when you're lived in like a developed country or a developing country, you kind of for a lot of people they know how to kind of make things last or be self-reliant because you can't rely upon services being there or and I think for Manusos that's kind of the cultural difference is that for Manusos being Latin America, not to say that it's like there's not resources there or services, but it's not always as consistent and omnipresent as it is for the US. Like for the average person in the US, they live a very comfortable life as compared to like other parts of the world. So I think that comes into play as well.
Yeah. Let's see. So also, I mean, we have like little things too, like she's getting the mail that like Helen got her a gift, and like they got her like it was like a neck massager.
Yes. Or was it just
Was it a pillow or was it a massage? It was something. I thought it was like a neck, something like help with joints or something. It was.
yeah, I think there was something like that, yeah.
I think I'll just say neck massage or neck pillow or something. Anyway,
Like a massage gun or whatever.
yeah, I think it was like the neck massager gun thing. That's what.
Yeah. No.
Anyway,
I also what's kind of a fun detail is that like whenever Carol gets drunk and falls asleep on her couch, she's always like,
Golden Girls.
yeah.
Love it. See, I just the little touches like the fact she has like the DVD box set, which now this is all streaming, which is the idea that she has like myself right now. No joke. Right now, I've been rewatching through Everybody Loves Raymond on DVD. I just oh crap.
Are you a physical media guy?
Well, yeah, I just realized, son. I just doing this right now.
What?
I just said the word. I said the show. I can't say the show, or else we're gonna be not demonetized. I hope this video doesn't get taken down because I slipped and I said the show.
Oh, I remember
Oh,
what you're talking about, right?
God. Okay. Anyway, sorry, folks. Hopefully, but yeah, we're not gonna say it again. Just
Man, I forgot that's such a wild story. I remember you were taking.
Yeah. That's why we come up. Usually, what we say is like everybody thinks Robert's a cool guy or something. That's usually what we. It's we kind of have a. Yeah. Sorry.
Everybody likes Robbie.
Yeah. Or Robbie's cool or something like that.
Yeah, no. Yeah, but are you a physical media guy?
Oh, I am absolutely a physical media guy. If I can, right now even now I'm just when the advent of streaming, I'm paranoid. I'm trying to get them all on physical media, especially with that's been like like it's open season on all the animated shows. Believe me, if Codename Kids Next Door were released on DVD, I would buy it in an instant just to make sure I have it because
Yeah, no. Interesting for me, like Golden Girls is kind of a fun because I don't know about you, but I always hear it like when there's like guys that like, oh, I don't like them like many girly things, but like Golden Girls, I've always hear being like the one refrain or one of the few exceptions of like a thing that's like made for women or would attract a female audience that like a lot of guys like, or just I mean, Golden Girl can be liked by everyone, but it is kind of interesting for her to be a fan of that kind of show because like Golden Girls is a very breezy, fun, sitcom kind of a deal, and it's like a female it's like a show about like four female friends essentially.
Now you know Carol is like go with the
Blanche.
yeah, the B. Wait, well, what about the B. Arthur character?
Is that not?
Well, that's no. I don't think that's Blanche. Is it Dorothy? Is she? Yeah, it's Dorothy.
Yes. No, no. It's Dorothy. It's Dorothy. You're correct.
Yes,
Yeah.
Dorothy. She always says Blanche. You're thinking of how she always says Blanche. 'Cause
Yes. My bad. Yeah.
Blanche was like the flirty one. Blanche was
Yeah.
like Blanche Dubois. That was I forget what Betty White's character's name was though.
It's Rose.
That's Rose. Okay, they always have. You'll notice it's always a Rose clip that's playing. This in tribute to Betty White. If you really, if you notice.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. And
And it wasn't like just. It honestly was because she always had the fun lines. That's why they had like. It's always why it's a Rose clip.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's kind of funny that that Carol's Dorothy coded.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, it's like the little human touches there like that, and she's like getting mail. She's getting like something that Helen sent her like the last thing. It's like the last thing that ever gets sent, and also the in burying her, we have the the coyote. Are they wolves or coyotes?
I feel like coyotes.
Yes,
Wolves. Actually,
my instinct is coyotes, but I think we say wolves. I'm not
I think
sure.
I guess it's not like as clear cut as say alligator versus crocodile. But no,
We know there are coyotes in Albuquerque. That's why I think it's coyotes. But I've never really seen a coyote, so I don't know.
yeah, it's just wild animals.
Right. The point being, again, I love that. I love illogical logic, and I know obviously this is more logic than it is illogical logic because this could actually happen under the circumstances. But I'm saying if you did somehow bury a body in your backyard and you basically just purely like bury it and didn't do like, I guess lie. Or does lie deter the animals? Was that why lie is put in the grave? What does lie do when you bury a body, Rohit?
Yeah, you make it sound like I know like what deters like animals from digging. Like lie when you say lie, is that like a degree thing that
Yeah, you put lie in the it's like the gardening thing, it's like the thing you put on the grass, or I don't know if it goes in the hole or in the grass.
how do you spell it?
What? I think it's like Ly. Is it Lye? Like it's not lime, but as a kid I thought it was lime, but it's like a lie. Like outdoor lie or something. It's like you get like a Home Depot or something.
Yeah, so apparently lye can be used to deter dogs from digging, but apparently it's highly toxic and dangerous.
Well, yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's kind of the point.
Well, that's the thing. So I mean,
Yeah.
is it for? So it's not for dissolving the body, but it's for deterring animals from the body, right?
Yes.
I know it's not supposed. Obviously, you're not supposed to use. Really, you're not supposed to use lye unless I don't think you actually use lye in real, like legit burials. I know they always use it for like trying to hide a body. But,
Ah man, I wish I like the thing is I like ages ago I read a book about like dead bodies and just kind of the different uses in history and all that, and then I swear I wish I don't recall anything about like what materials to be used when burying a body. I imagine though I thought the discouragement was just like Carol having just shooting a gun or whatever, or the fact that she kind of had like a stone built on top of the
well,
burial.
that's what she did ultimately. Yeah, I'm saying I'm saying because she didn't use like lye or something. That's why they were drawn there in the first. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. So the point being, like, she just kind of buried her, and then it was like we saw like these wolves and everything. And,
Yeah.
LEB confirms it's wolves.
Also, a really cool thing to show like what happens for anyone living that in the Southwest when there's not like
Electricity and power to kind of deter.
like and also like park rangers and like the wildlife or whatever people that keep like animal populations low or
So,
contained.
with the world building, by the way, I love like the details. Like they're trying to conserve power. Everyone's like sleeping in like almost like a flood shelter, kind of like basically a big community center or whatever. And that's they're all
I think
sleeping there.
the high like the world post like the higher takeover is kind of a socialist utopia, right? There's like
Yeah.
no like there's no you don't have like there's no distinction or desire for things to be paid because like why do we have to earn money if everyone's all like working in the collective whole?
Yeah,
And yeah, like I think what's also interesting is like the fact that animals aren't part of the hive. So and I think the fact that like the one dog that's like just kind of hanging around in the I think the gymnasium because like one of their owners is the owner that used to have that dog was still there.
yeah.
It's kind of that I'm very curious to see like because I feel like that's going to be a detail that's going to pay off like down the line.
I think
Like I feel
Carol's
like
going to end up with that dog, but I don't know.
when I was thinking more like how could one utilize animals, you know, to maybe like as like a defense mechanism against the hive or whatever.
Well, that's the thing. That's kind of what we're building with the end of the season. Where Carol's going to need like kind of defenses. So I mean,
The atom bomb, yeah.
yeah. But anyway, so Sprouts, one of my favorite things in the sea. I love the Sprouts sequence, and that's a classic, kind of Vince Gilligan Albuquerque verse kind of thing. The idea we're doing like a big, again, it's big enough without being crazy. It's it's the idea of like it's the relatable thing. We've all been grocery shopping at some point in our lives, and I love this the familiarity, but it's like one, it's already trippy seeing completely cleaned out grocery store, and then it's like, hey, I want my Sprouts back. I want my local grocery store back, and they all show up instantly and restock it. It's awesome.
It's funny for Sprouts to have been in the show because like I'm where I grew up, there was a Sprouts nearby, and so I feel like it's like if you didn't go to Sprouts, you went to Trader Joe's. You go to Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, like one of those.
Honestly, I thought Sprouts was made up. I didn't know Sprouts was real.
No, there's like Sprouts, Whole Foods, and Trader Joe's is like the big three for like artisanal or higher end grocery shopping.
Yeah. Cool.
Wow.
Anyway, so all that's just really it was a really well directed sequence.
Mm-hmm. What'd you think of? Here's sort of two directions I'm considering, and I'm kind of leaving this up to you. Where do you want to take this? You want to kind of?
Well, do you want to talk about the ice hotel real quick?
Sure, yeah.
So we flash back to the one last thing with Helm we got to talk about. So we flash back to the ice hotel. Now, the ice hotel is kind of symbolic, kind of. It's not in a pretentious way. It's just one. There are like unique kind of tourist kind of examples there. It's really. And by the way, in case anyone's wondering, no, they didn't go to an actual ice hotel, but it's a really great replication of one. They're by the way, they're roasting, and that's again, they're making it look like it's cold. It's not cold at all, and that's
yeah.
But it's impressive. But that's a real thing. However, I don't think the beds are actually made of ice. I think that's just something they kind of did for the gag of the show. I think. But it's the idea that they're going to like this touristy kind of thing, and then Canada and like places I think near the Arctic where the Aurora Borealis is, they actually have these locations, and it's just something that she and Helen would do, and it's like Helen just kind of wanting to kind of go on a trip and everything. Anyway, so it's symbolic of a plot point later in the season where I think the idea is they did this either right before, or right after Carol froze her eggs for the potential future with Helen.
Oh, I didn't think of that.
So it's kind of symbolic of the whole freezing cold,
I kind of had the read for me, and that's a good pull to.
I think that I forget where they actually said if it was right before, or right after, but essentially it's around the time where she froze the egg. That's when it's kind of set.
Yeah, because in my mind, I'm just thinking about like how an ice castle would be like Carol's idea of a vacation, where it's not like just going to the beach or something that's like nice and breezy. It's something that like it's an uncomfortable experience, but it's because the uniqueness, like, oh, like this is an ice castle. People have to put an effort to like maintain the iciness of it all. I feel like that's something that like maybe Carol, I don't know if she didn't say dislikes like to have gone to that trip, but I feel like she liked the idea of it more than the actual experience, because at least that's the way it plays to me when Helen and Carol are interacting in the Heist Hotel.
Yeah. But again, also it's kind of symbolic of the relationship in terms of, again, I forget what you said earlier in the podcast to kind of summarize it, but it's kind of like the contentment thing. It's kind of like this is not ideal, but it's kind of like
tolerance.
The tolerance. It's kind of the tolerance, almost like a tolerance to the cold in this case, but it's kind of a tolerance to it's like they're together. It's not not an ideal situation, but in
Mhm.
terms of like, I mean, from as a touristy thing, it's oh, we want to observe it. You don't want to spend the night there. You're gonna freeze. It's cold.
Well, I mean, I also think it's like for it's interesting that like it's tolerable for Carol. I really wonder like how much is it that Helen's tolerating Carol? Because really think about it in the sense, imagine like, and that's where I think the whole Carol, if you look at if you saw her as a guy, like it's a very interesting thing. They're like Carol and Helen's relationship. Like Helen is basically with someone who is such an alcoholic, they can't drive their vehicle because they have an alcohol ignition device, ignition interlock device.
I love the way we're monitoring the alcohol in the show because we have that, and later on we have the like the sensor device that was basically put in by the I forget if it was like the clinic for the frozen eggs, or it wasn't an adoption agency. It was like some some way of which they monitor like the whole
No, no, no.
fertility thing, right?
No. It's like the device because it's in like a liquor cabinet.
Yeah, yeah, it's in the liquor cabinet.
And Helen put that device there because she didn't want like I'm kind of confused. Was it that like Carol was supposed to go through a round of medication with their eggs frozen or whatever, or like alcohol would impact it?
It was something in relation to like the freezing the eggs process, and I guess Helen
Oh,
lived
they could
there.
be activated. You know what? I see because like well, for a lot of like surgical milk procedures, you can't eat or like drink as so alcohol like definitely messes up with that. So yeah, that's a good point. It yeah, it's very interesting. I'm very curious like how like if the alcoholism was very um was there from the start.
Which again, my theory, and I don't know if they're going to get this. This is a thing that I don't think they necessarily have to get into, but I think they would mention it. It's not a thing we have to flash back to, but it's based on the fact. Again, I really think a lot of it stems from the whole conversion camp thing they tried sending her to. Which again, ultimately, by the way, I think this is me reading into it, mind you, but this has always been kind of my read on the whole in mentioning the conversion camp pass thing with her is that
Mhm.
I think it's kind of a deep seated connection to why I think deep down or subconsciously she's bumping up against the whole happy smiley kind of like an AI-ish kind of like user-friendly collective. It's like these are people telling you one thing collectively, again, like the whole collective, like people saying what you're doing, Carol, there's something wrong with you, but we're gonna fix it. I
Oh,
think that's
that's such a good take. Man, yeah, and also I think the fact with how much, also think about how much she's like with the Judge's Joe Squares. I think it's also apt with like how much trauma she's experienced with that. That explains why
mm-hmm.
such a alcohol. Yeah, yeah. No, that now it kind of makes sense for her. Like she's kind of self medicating with alcohol.
Yeah,
Although I'm very curious though. It's like because when and you know what's crazy is that we've talked for this much and we've already gone to talk about Carol and Sosha because I feel
I know. There's a
I,
lot.
I mean, there's a lot to unpack, which I think goes to show how great the show is.
Yeah.
But I think with Carol and Sosha, there's so much to unpack about how she comes to the story the way she is, how Carol, even though intellectually she knows that this is a hive mind that's interacting with her, she still individualizes Sosha and treats her like she's a person, but she's not. She's an extension of a collective intelligence or
And
mind.
Zosha is technically from the get go, she's a manipulation.
Yeah, they specifically went for someone that is the female like version of who's
Of
the
the
lead
yeah,
pirate guy.
yeah.
Um, and I think it's kind of like it's kind of like the higher intelligence inadvertently like honeypotted Carol, and it kind of almost worked.
I love that Carol like snuffed it out really quickly. Like the moment she showed up, pretty much. She ran inside, she got the book. Is like and again, it's I love that the collective, the hive mind. They again they were trying to pull the wool over her eyes, and they were hoping she wouldn't find out, but it wasn't necessarily. It's like it's nothing they're not going to cop to, but it was definitely the intent. So they're definitely again, this is where again Gilligan, I love what he's doing here with the whole. He's not spelling out. He's not telling you like what to connect directly. But again, this is where I see some a lot of the AI stuff in places. It's the idea that there is a user friendliness. There is like a we are trying to
giving
we're
you
trying
everything
to generate like
needed.
automatically generate what you would like kind of thing, like use like suggested kind of like that kind of stuff. Like we think you would like this, Carol. That it's a
It's sort of the pleasing of like one's needs and desires,
yeah.
and in Carol and Menusos more so like they're characters that are willing to experience some level of discomfort or uh boredom or
It's
tedium.
anathema to Manusis to have things done for him, like period, and just have
Yeah,
things brought to him on a silver platter,
yeah,
and it's just it's completely anathema to the guy.
yeah, and I guess like part of it is that like you do in a certain sense kind of think about like hmm, I kind of wonder if there's also a class thing at play. Because I think it was like Carol's house is a really pretty nice house.
Well, that's the thing. Carol has like she's got a obviously it's not a huge like like New York. I don't know if it's like got remember every book that comes out. It's a lot of times it's gonna be like a New York Times bestseller at least for like the first week. Then it's just gonna be who cares.
Mhm.
But so I don't know if technically she was like a best selling author, but at the very least she sells a lot of books to a lot of people reading the romance.
She has a
The
dedicated enough
romanticism.
audience that she like flies around, and her house is not. She has also look at her liquor cabinet. That like all that alcohol is not cheap.
It would make sense that she's, I think in the world of books, and she'd be successful enough to have a nice house in Albuquerque, but maybe not like L.A. That kind of.
Yeah, and also I think and I think if you want to kind of read more into Carol's character and how she kind of like feels like she's above like kind of the populist nature of you know of books specifically like romantasy and all that stuff. It's like maybe she thinks like like New Mexico Albuquerque, New Mexico is like more authentic and real than like being in like a more phony city like LA and New York City. Like I
Yeah.
don't know if you would articulate, but I feel like that I wouldn't be surprised if Carol has that mindset because she feels like someone that wants authenticity and realness and be serious. Like those are kind of things that like I think when this character was pitched as male, I think that would be so like that makes such an interesting like gender analysis about it all. And I think along those same lines, the fact that like the whole big thing is that like originally, the pirate character was going to be a woman, and it was changed to a guy. And I think the fact that Carol's a lesbian, I think it's very interesting to kind of think of
I like
like
how naturally it's just fit in there too. It's not like we don't draw like a lot of attention to it. You're thinking maybe Helen's just a friend, but then when you see the loss and the gravity, it was like, oh, okay, that
no,
makes
no,
sense.
but also think of it. This it's kind of interesting. Like Dragon, like is it publicly known that Carol? Like, do you think it's publicly known that Carol is a lesbian?
No, no, it's not.
B, and that so it's not. So I think
No.
the fact that like it's I kind of I think with it in light of in light of her conversion camp history, the fact that she basically has to appear or present as a heterosexual woman or like
Yeah.
conform to heteronormativity, I think certainly does like add a level of resentment that and like the fact like she's trying to like basically like straight middle-aged white women.
Like I don't think she's hiding it, but I don't think she's necessarily
Not
announcing
hiding it,
it.
but it definitely is interesting, like her audience and the fact that the book. It's this is a fantasy for straight women, middle
Yeah.
age, like the
Now we
swoon.
did see she did have a few gay men in the book signing.
Well, but again, like straight women and gay men can have similar fantasies of like
True, like, absolutely, yes. That's
yeah,
essentially that's the demographic she's playing towards.
and I think like the fact that like because think about like her attire. Like when the only time she's ever dressed in the feminine way is when she
Was
goes
the dinner?
to dinner, yeah. But otherwise, she dresses pretty like I want to don't want to use the word masculine, but she wears just like jean like
It's very casual. It's very just kind of around the house
yeah.
casual.
She doesn't dress like, but when you look at Sosha, she dresses a lot more feminine,
Oh yeah,
and I think that's kind of an interesting. And I think the fact that like Carol was originally a male, that it's kind of the whole like like the like this invading force brings in like a seductress or temptress, and Carol less of social seducing her. It's more just Carol is so desperate, so lonely that like she just jumps headfirst into like falling in love with someone that isn't really a whole human, but she just wants company. For as much as Carol is an individualist, like she she does want to feel alive. She misses like having someone like Helen or someone that like can entertain or talk to her. But the tragedy of it is that like she eventually like she implicitly accepts the other's like line of reasoning that this is something that could be of use or benefit.
So with Zosha, it's kind of the perverse thing is that they used Helen to. They're basically using Helen to make Carol happy here because again, only Helen knew about the pirate, the truth about the pirate who was Pirate Lady. In fact, so
Mhm.
she was the only one who really knew that. And we even touched on that right before everything broke out. Like the whole she's throughout the whole. You want to tell him the truth, like George Clooney's like, okay, fine, George Clooney. We'll say it's George Clooney. Not the actual truth that the white. Which that's the other fascinating thing about this, Rohit.
Yeah.
There's kind of your where a lot of things you're drawing from the whole the initial Carol originally being male and everything. It's kind of where might be where we get the whole pirate switch to some degree.
Yeah, that's I was thinking about it because I
Yeah,
mentioned that here. Yeah, that's I think it's a fun like it's fun to see kind of like a show that like deals with gender roles, but not like a direct thing. It's just kind of in the background. But when you think of it, it so impacts everything that occurs, not just only narratively, but also just in terms of the characterizations. Like Debate kind of being the stand-in for every like male like person that like if he had the keys to the kingdom, he would just a do James Bond. You know what's funny is like the whole Star Trek of it all. It's like I wonder if Debate is like a Star Trek TNG fan because it feels like he's trying to recreate like when you go in the holodeck and do like a role play.
I
That's what
think he does. I think he's a Star Trek.
yeah, and so that it's kind of funny. Like he's such like he has this sort of stereotypical guy pursuits, um, and then Carol, it's like she's trying to be this kind of strong, stoic kind of figure, but just over time she feels so vulnerable, so like lost. She just kind of succumbs to this. And the thing is, like Sosha, I think what's so unique about her as a character is that she doesn't make such obvious plays to like flirt with Carol or really like you know, tempt her with joining. It's just, I think, just by Carol spending time with Zosha, I think one, Zosha being played by, Caroline Vidra, who's beautiful woman,
Oh, of course.
and also just very charming. Even when she doesn't mean to be. And I think the fact that like her defenses kind of, get chipped over time. And I think when Carol kind of has Zosha like force her to use the I pronouns rather than they or we and try to individualize her. It's so interesting for her to kind of. I was like, okay, I'm taking this like this husky human being and kind of making him my doll. Like for essentially Carol's playing make believe. She's playing house just as much as Debate is playing James Bond.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So a few things with Zosha here. Just this whole thing. So again, so they're basically so Zosha does have a bit of an agenda here. Again they've used Helen's memory to make Carol happy, like by using the truth about the whole pirate lady thing is like something that would put her at ease, which is really messed up and kind of already kind of emphasizes a bit of a shadiness to what the collective is trying to do because ultimately through the relationship that's being forged with Zosha, and there's the ambiguous question of like how much of it is, and they even kind of admit to it, like they are, because Carol asks him point blank, and she knows they can't lie. Like, are you just trying to throw me off the scent and just trying to get me to not like look into how to undo all this? And they're kind of
Mhm.
saying yes. So I mean, ultimately, a lot of this, so there's it adds the paranoia. Like, if there are any feelings, are they real? And my argument between the whole Josha thing and Diabate, what he's doing is that I think Carol is forging a bond with the collective. She's forging a bond with them, and suddenly she's trying to. She's making compromises. She's trying to find she's gone through an experience where it's been kind of like the deprivation of any social interaction, which we saw in like the time in which they all left her, and she like said the whole come home. She wrote the come home message. Um, so again, there was time to factor in that, and she's like not. It's unconventional because it's not just one. Despite her attempts to individualize, she's kind of having a relationship with the whole shebang all at once.
Mhm.
Diabate, on the other hand, again, that's filling a need. That's kind of like he's just kind of doing it in excess and on a grand scale. Like one, it's not just one lady; it's a whole harem of women. before he did this thing.
But if the fact that like these were people that were formerly occupied by others that may or may not still be there.
Yeah.
I mean, they both Debate and Carol go into they fall into the gray area of whether they actually are having intercourse with
But
people.
Carol's looking at it though as again like it's the new people occupying the body, where Diabate it's there's no connection, he's individualizing them with like whatever their names are, but he doesn't really care who they are, and he's not thinking of them. The collective is just the yes button to him. It's like, okay, yes, we'll do this, and like
but by that same logic, the collective through Zosha is a yes button for Carol, right?
But that was her kind of giving in, and I don't know. I think Carol was a moment of kind of weakness in that case. It was weakness that took over.
But I mean, it is a moment of weakness. But at the end of the day, it's like I think Manusos, for all his like ideological rigidity that caused nearly his death to occur, he has the most consistent ethical position. And the thing is, for Carol, it's like if it took just 2 months of being without a person for her to kind of go and fall in the gray area of whether she actually like, I don't want to use the R word, but that is kind of implied with the fact like if these people are even there.
So she's kind of there to do that though. She's kind of manipulating. There's an argument to be made is they're here that actually something Rohith real quick. When they shot that, there was a lot of it's still I have to rewatch it to know for sure, honestly, and even then I'm not sure, is that the way in which they shot the kiss, there was a lot of debate over like who leads the kiss, like is Zosha like leaning in and stopping and Carol's going for it, is Carol like fully doing it, like who's aggressing the kiss, because if Zosha does it then it's a full-on manipulation, if Carol like kind of leans in, Zosha just kind of completes it. There's a lot of there's a lot of ambiguity over like how that kiss works, and so I really don't think like Diabate. I think there's an absolute for the argument.
But like regardless of where it starts it, the end result's still the same, right? Debate has slept with. He's basically had like multiple sex dolls. Like
yes, that's what I'm saying. He's multiple.
But like okay, but what Carol it took 2 months and she had one sex doll, and then so basically, are we just arguing that it's a matter of numbers? Like, if Carol had like a few more, is she more equivalent to Debate?
It's like, not just numbers, but it's also Carol coming around to like, okay, like it's kind of evaluating how I see the collective. So it's how she's looking at them.
But how she sees it is that she is implicitly entertaining delusion for her own like sanity, well-being, which I can empathize, and that makes Carol a very complicated, morally ambiguous, and like the Walter White or Saul Goodman kind of. But like it makes her a flawed and nuanced character. That you can feel like you could keep yourself or maybe others fall in that position, but even though you see yourself or see others fall in that position, at the end of the day, if we are to assume that the prior hope, the prior human self is still there, buried deep inside, or is kind of like in the car and is the backseat, like imagine if Zosha was like a straight woman or asexual or whatever. Like how violated would you feel to know that your body's being used by this like lonely woman, right?
Yeah, but again, the collective put her there though.
No. But Carol took the bait. But Carol, it's like, okay, be like, oh well, the drug dealer shows up. It's like there has to be a person that takes or pays the money to take the drug, right? Like you're given the apple. It's your choice to take it or not. And like Manusos is the one that says no consistently to his detriment.
Yeah.
And I think like for Carol, like like I feel like where maybe you feel more of a Carol for Debate and less for Debate. As a Debate, he's just kind of like playing like a kid. Like, but at the end of the day, it's like I think that's kind of where
the collective's dangling a carrot, though, man. It's this thing of like it's the trauma and tragedy response with.
No, I'm not saying what Carol does is it doesn't make sense or it does, but I think that's where for both Carol and Debate, they are in this morally gray situation. And I think for Carol, I'm very curious, like if Manusos is aware of that, like at the extent of Carol and Zosha's relationship.
I love the tension when Manusos shows up during that. By the way, just like when the two, like it's the idea of like we, the audience, know Carol's gotten a lot closer because of that in that gray area, and Manusos we know is just completely rigid black and white. So that's going to be so we know that when Menusos was alone with Zosha and they talked, and it's like, and Zosha has filled Menusos in on everything. Just the dread of like, okay, this character's armed with information that is basically like he might be reevaluating how viable Carol is as an ally in all this.
Yeah, does he see her as basically like a
You're in league with them, Carol.
yeah, you're a sympathizer?
Yeah. So LEB in the comments is real quick. Is I want to throw. So she kind of voiced a little bit of what we just kind of went through with the old Zosha thing, where says I get the impression. This is kind of where I aired on it, like for a little bit. Is that I get the impression that as much as Carol likes to act like a complete individual who's totally rejected any societal pressure for her to conform the ideal, she kind of hates herself. So she falls in love, in quotes, with Zosha because being desired by literally everyone is the ultimate form of approval by society at large. Like initially, she scoffed at the idea that like they liked the book and everything, and she kind of quizzed them, and they had criticisms and stuff, and it was like then we got into the Helen criticisms and all that. So it's the idea that ultimately the way I look at it is it's the whole thing of like as much it's the thing of like no matter what, as much as we push something away, like she pushes away the cause of death, the collective that caused Helen's death. She's pushed them away, and that's one of the reasons taken 2 months or what have you. But at the end of the day, I think what she realized in like the withdrawal kind of months, she needs companionship so she doesn't go crazy, as we saw from the Gap. And on the flip side, what I love, by the way, is that while Carol, I just want to highlight the Gap episode real quick because I love in that episode we saw the dichotomy of like Carol is by herself, but in society in the city can do anything she wants. She's crossed like the IOU lines that Medusa's will not cross, and she's having a grand old time.
There's still a George O'Keefe painting, which is fun reference to
Breaking Bad, which I know I love that. And which would go to the museum, which Jesse never got to go to.
Mm-hmm.
And on the flip side, Menusos, he's in the seventh circle, just sticking, just again, both of them are just kind of traversing, a gap, and they both kind of like, she breaks at the end, he doesn't. Well, he physically breaks, she emotionally breaks, or I guess morally, however you want to, yeah. Oh boy, there's a lot to talk about here, man. It's really...
you know what I also think? Here's something that's kind of insidious or kind of dark to think about is that the Hive, for all the people that they took over, they in a way killed a lot of other people that didn't acclimate to the integration, right?
Yeah, that's right. 800. Well, again, they killed 886 people who they were in the wrong place, wrong time, or didn't go well, or like they're elderly and sick bed or whatever.
Yeah, so like that includes Helen among the dead.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, Helen fell. That's the thing. How that she didn't fall.
Have you seen the movie Monsters Ball or know of the movie with Halle Berry and Billy Bob Thornton?
Vaguely.
So to briefly spoil that movie, that's a movie where Billy Bob Thornton plays a security or he plays someone in a prison who like executes like prisoners or whatever, for death row and all that. And then one of the people that gets executed, this black man, there remains his wife and son or whatever. And then one thing leads to another. Like Billy Bob Thornton like meets up with Halle Berry's character, who's the wife. They shack up and all that stuff and fall in love and whatever.
That won her an Oscar.
Yeah. So Carol essentially is sleeping with someone who caused, whether intentionally or not, the death of her spouse.
Yes.
Like that. Think about like that's also another messed up thing.
Yeah, no, that's what I said. That's the yeah.
And also LEB. I don't know if you saw her last comment. I think it's also that's also kind of icky to think about as well.
Yeah. The fact that we know that brings us to the next point I want to get to. So this is the thing I think is going to really pay off in season 2. So the fact that we know the children are part of the hive mind makes it really gross to think about. So with the world building, we establish that there's overall 13 people were immune. By the end of the season, it's 12, but let's just say 13 people were immune until they figure out how to infect them. With basically until they find out how to infect them, it's like your wish is our command. Kind of that's kind of the logic.
Yeah.
So, So everyone's in service with a smile. The bodies essentially are shells for the collective. They have it's a repository of all the knowledge of everyone. They're all existing simultaneously, same time, all over the place, et cetera, et cetera. And this leads to the very eerie debate that I think is best exemplified by the two characters who I think are really going to mix it up in season 2. So we have Carol, we have I'm butchering your name, and I apologize, Laxima or Laxma.
Lakshman. Oh, the mom who like
Yes,
the kid is still there and then
yeah.
gets mad at when the kid like yeah.
So that character fascinates me, and that's going to be. I love the whole Air Force One scene in which Carol, like, I was so dialed in because I'm Carol in that scene, man. I'm like trying to lay out, okay, guys, we need a plan here. Here's what we know, and just I'm trying to trying to get it through the Loxima. However, I think Carol, you know, Carol, I agree with all. We have the audience. We know Carol's been through. I think Carol's making some very salient points, but I think she could have been a little softer touch with Locksmith.
Lakshmi.
But
No, I think
wait, how do you say it?
it's Lakshmi.
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 Yes.
Okay, I hope we'll see what it sticks. Lakshmi. Okay.
Yes. So what I think is interesting, and I wonder, and I definitely know they're going to probably focus on this, and like I'd be very interested for all the others. What do they do to day to day lives, like post hive takeover? Right? They don't have to be required to work. All their needs can be taken care of by the hive mind. So like, what do they do to kind of like pass the time or like? Because think of it this way, I think it's very interesting because I mentioned this being like a social utopia. People don't have to work to live. Like everyone is there for the collective well being, you know. And I kind of wonder if you ever get flashbacks that like for those people maybe they were just like living in like a capitalist like doggy dog world. Because what for the Asian gentleman that was there, was he Japanese or Korean?
I My instinct is Japanese, but I really don't know.
Because if the gentleman is Korean, I think he might be Japanese, but because if there was like say a Korean character,
There is a chance he's Korean, but I don't know.
because I don't know if you watch as much South Korean media as I feel like I've seen, at least specifically like Squid Games and some other a few movies. It feels like being South Korea, especially in Seoul, or whatever. It's like it feels like a capitalist hellscape, and I kind of wonder for characters that are pre-show or liking the fact that they're in the high world, if they just lived very economically precarious situations, and no one and there's not many like organized resources or groups that are there to help them out. They're just kind of fending for themselves, and now the fact their needs are taken care of, like what do they do with that kind of free time? And that's where like the whole socialist kind of deal is. It's interesting. Like, what do you do to like spend the time if you don't have to work to live? Like, what do you live for? Especially if you're one of a few people that have their sense of self.
Yeah, I mean, with Lakshmi, it's the idea that the idea she's used her family. She's tried to go on by the implication that we got. Mind you, this is the thing where like I think of season 2, if anyone's gonna get like kind of a flashback or something with this character, because I think she's going to be very antagonistic towards Carol, and she might be leading an uprising because we kind of set this up vaguely, like the whole thing of like we can't interfere if you two go to war with each other, kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's kind of where the line's drawn. So that to me seems like a big setup for okay, if anyone's going to go up against Carol, like I think the whole point of like episode 2 is that Carol, like, she was trying to make some allies and she ended up making a lot of potential enemies with the brunch that went bad with Lakshmi. Yeah. And we kind of turned to a running gag where like Lakshmi's like always like just kind of sniping at Carol over the, what have you done to my son? Like, it's not your son, it's a shell. And the whole the whole gynecological thing with
yeah, I do. It is like I wonder if for any of those characters, if there's going to be like a growing like disgust and or like anxiety over sort of how like hive mind the hive are. Because I feel like hey, the grass is greener on the other side. I think for these characters that maybe are appreciating the state of the hive world, maybe over time they might miss something that they didn't realize they missed, but because of not having it there, like they start to slowly realize that the world before wasn't perfect, but it felt authentic or right to them.
Yeah, it's like the argument of they're not your friends and family, they're using their bodies versus like Lashmi is like it's kind of a tribute and a delusion at the same time that they are your family and everything. Like they're playing the roles of your family. I'm going to say this though. Still bothers me when I think about it. Like Lashmi, you're upset because your grandfather who was driving the car. He died because Carol like was arguing with with the collective and everything. But what are you doing making your 80-year-old whoever you're making the grandfather drive the car when you have like a slew of other people who could be doing that for you? You're
No,
gonna
no, no,
have
but that's part. But I think it's kind of how like maybe there were just things that weren't possible without the hive mind. With the hive mind, that's probably exemplary of how like maybe prior to the high world, like she was always driving her grandfather around, and maybe it's like, oh, this is nice. I feel like Lakshmi, I say this as someone that's from an Indian background. Um, for women in Indian society, for as much progress as been made, though not as much as say women in the United States, that's had neither here nor there. There's still like an overall patriarchal assumption that like women have to not only work, do the work in the workplace, but also do a lot of cleaning, cooking, raising your children, and all that stuff. And that's a lot of labor on like a mom or a grandmother, or auntie, or whatever. And I wonder for Lakshmi if the thing that she likes is that it's not just that the world's cooperative, is that everyone pitches in and it's not just put upon her. Because I would not be surprised if there's a flashback and like she's just the one that's keeping the household together. And it's a multi generation. I think that's the thing that for the people from Asian countries where they see the value in the high world is not just everyone's cooperative, maybe for some of the women, especially in like very conservative, traditional like backgrounds in parts of Asia or the developing world, you know, they're not. It's not a student that's on them to take care of everything. That they can just kind of relax and they don't have to be responsible taking care of the house. Everything's taken care of, and they can just kind of be themselves. Like that's sort of a privilege or thing that like for most Western women they get to enjoy to one degree or another. But yeah, no, I think I'm very curious to see what.
I mean, I like that each character has a different flavor of moral gray, a different morally gray kind of dilemma for the most part. That they're kind of contending with. Obviously Medusa is more black and white than this gray. You know what I mean? They all have like kind of an ethical kind of.
They're operating in a moral spectrum.
Yeah, yeah, and with Lashma, she's dealing. To me, it reads as like it's kind of a culture clash as far as like she seems to be very stubbornly in denial over the situation. I mean, obviously she knows what's going on, but she's kind of like made her bed of like, okay, look, I'm just going to keep the world spinning as it was. My son is still alive. So seemingly in denial and everything. Carol is just trying to, she's just causing trouble. So all she's dealing with is the reality of when Carol tries to, in quotes, solve our problem, my kid has a seizure, and I don't like that. So I think the gray in there we might explore is that I can't fault a mother for caring about a child, but I have to question that when, well, it's not really your kid anymore. And this lady is trying to, if she can cure him, that might bring your son back potentially. I mean, otherwise it could go horribly wrong, but still.
I mean, also it could be the case that like I think it's considering. Imagine if Lakshmi saw all her family like basically having a stroke,
Yeah.
and then maybe part of her is like, it'd be very because I think. I mean, this is me putting a lot.
Like it's a great moral dilemma, though. I'm gonna give it. Yeah.
This is me putting a lot in this character, but I'd be wondering like for Lakshmi being kind of the one that like everyone relies upon to do all the work, housework, or whatever. Like, well, her family, like, or just part of her that's like, oh, she's like scared for her family, but part of her that's like, she might feel a sense of relief, and then maybe those are complicated feelings to have. And I think when the family comes back as the hive mind, like maybe she has sort of a bit of a nervous breakdown, and part of her way to like cope is just to like psychologically, it's just to pretend nothing has changed. Like maybe deep down, Lakshmi does know, but like she can't like acknowledge that because that's a lot. That's a lot to like. Because look at Carol. Like it took 2 months, and she's shacking up with like a member of the hive that she very much applied was basically taking bodies without consent, and she participated in that. So I think it goes to show that like there's a breaking point for individual like for people to have individual reliance and self domain, because at the end of the day, human beings are social creatures for better or worse, and whether it's because we need to rely on someone else, or maybe you just want to be around other people. I know there's someone that has a quote like "hell is other people," but a certain degree, like there is also a great degree of hell in being alone.
But yeah, I could see a lot of directions we can go in with Carol and Lushman. That yeah, honestly, I could see like a whole like redemptive arc, even like the whole idea, like maybe season two, she's the antagonist, like trying to rally one against her, and then ultimately it might be a thing of like I'm not saying they have to go that route, but ultimately it could be a workaround where Carol and Locksmith see that they actually there's a lot in common with through the connection of like denial of the self and the whole conversion camp thing,
It,
perhaps.
I would love to see if the rest of the non-infected get to visit Carol and Usos in Albuquerque.
I think they will. I mean, based if they keep kind of kicking things up a little, but that's the thing, we have to pay off that atom bomb.
Yeah, hi man.
Dickie,
Before
what's funny about? I'm sorry, you were gonna take where do we want to take us?
so, do you remember what book Carol was reading in the season finale?
No, I don't. What book
So
was
the
she?
book that she was reading a book, I think in the swimming pool or whatever, but it's in a montage of like Carol and Sosha like traveling or doing
Yeah,
couple.
yeah, yeah,
So she's reading a book called The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin.
yeah.
So the plot of the book is about this human that's part of this federation of planets. He comes to an alien world basically to convince this alien population to join this like federation. And as this person is like in the alien world, he's isolated, alone, but he gets to learn so much of this alien culture. And it's kind of this divide of like, all right, does this culture just remain of their own or on their own world or whatever, or do they have to like acclimate and become part of this collective whole? And considering the whole plot and premise of this show, it's such a great thing to figure out as like, is the hive the human coming into this alien world with just Earth, or is it just like Carol is the human trying to convince everyone to like, instead of integrating to collective, like individualize and have like a sense of self. So yeah, it was interesting for because because I remember because I was reading through an interview about that, and they mentioned that they're kicking around a few options of what book because that was very intentional. They were thinking about which book they wanted Carol to read because like Carol's like a fantasy, so she's very much it makes sense for her to read be into sci-fi fantasy, and the fact that Ursula K. Le Guin is like one of the most noteworthy famous writers in science fiction and fantasy as a whole. It makes sense because I think another option was Brave New World, and considering the premise and plot of Brave New World, that also would have been fitting as well.
It's a neat idea, is given the whole the sci-fi kind of like kind of take on the show, and just the fact that she's kind of getting that book or said well, and she's kind of maybe getting the idea, or at least doing something in conjunction with to what the end of the season's going to be with that book. I don't know. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and I think also like I think what's going to be interesting because man, I haven't read the book and I heard good things about the book and all that, but I think it'd be very interesting if like throughout each season there is a book that like Carol's seen reading that like parallels or could lead to certain plot points that are hinted that hints at certain plot points that will come up in the individual season or future.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past him. We had one of those at the tail end of Better Call Saul. It was kind of interesting, but yeah, it's possible.
Okay.
So, let's see. I mean, honestly, they've done there are a few book gags and Better Call Saul. I'm saying the most interesting, the most directly correlated is like at the very end of Better Call Saul. But anyway,
And you can provide the name. You can say the name of the book because it would spoil like what the.
I don't know. I think it's gonna be better if you gotta watch the show, man. Come on. Just
I have a lot of TV to watch.
well, think about this. Okay, you need something to chase the pluribus high. You should watch Better Call Saul. Come on. You have a long wait on Pluribus anyway. You might as well.
I mean, right now I'm going through Twin Peaks, and that's just a.
Well, think about this. If you watch Better Call Saul, you can listen to the companion podcast that, Judging Saul,
Man, are you like Dragon? Are you secretly part of AMC? Are you just trying to hawk every like AMC
Well,
program?
no, Rohit, that's our podcast. That's our recap podcast.
Oh, well, I guess I'll have to watch this. That would have.
As I'm saying, so if you watch it, you could actually see how Tiki and I were like basically respond to every episode, like as we watched it. If you wanted to, you want to take for if you want to really pad out, like by the time you finish, Pluribus season 2 will be out. That's how you do it.
I'll try to make time for Better Call Saul.
There you go.
Not by this year, then early next year, hopefully.
Okay. Anyway, so a few things we gotta try and hit quickly. So the dangerous elements that we include, the danger and kind of the thrilling kind of parts of the show. The grenade, for example, great episode, Gordon Smith episode. Mm-hmm. The ending of the episode when we actually pull out the grenade is it's this fun moment that sets the tone and also really kind of some people, I think the worrying complaint people could have had about Pluribus, I think we supplanted thanks to the moments like Grenade was like, there's not a lot happens after the pilot. There's a lot of, again, the slow burn aspect, which you can think about this. You go after, you have the pilot and then you start off with the slow burn of Joshua flying in the plane. And to me, I know that's going to pay off. But to the average Joe, I'm worried that they're going to be kind of disinterested, check out, like, oh, well, nothing happens. And then, of course, episode 3, end on the grenades, like, okay, we're going places again.
It's a show that I think, like...
Because 2 is a very dialogue-driven episode.
Well, I think, like, this show, at least this season, I can imagine people not enjoying it from week to week. But if you watch, like, all 9 episodes in one go, like...
You have a great time.
Yeah, because I think that's the thing. Like Vince Gilligan, I think he made this point because I remember he was interviewed about like trusting the audience, and his thing was like, "Look, I think I trust the audience to be smart enough to like eat with me and then just see how things unfold." And I think part of it is that like Vince Gilligan has Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and correct me if I'm wrong, Drag. Would you say that Better Call Saul like starts out slow but ramps up gradually over time, whereas Breaking Bad, like it's like relatively high octane from the beginning?
I mean, I guess it kind of like we ramp up and there are some season arcs with Better Call Saul where we build up to 2 points, but there's build, I think there's a little bit more that goes into Better Call Saul, but yeah, I mean, pretty much.
Yeah, and I guess because I've heard that criticism like, oh, like the first few seasons are slow burn or whatever. And I feel like it's something where if you were watching week to week, if you didn't have the patience or willingness to kind of see how the story unfolds over time, versus if you watch it all at once, like the appreciation level would be much different.
Yeah. Well, look, when I look back real quick, so when I look back on Better Call Saul, the big thing is again, just with how it unfolds again, season 1 is very different from the other seasons. It's not like a detriment. Again, I could take any season better because I could be a happy man. I love each season individually, and I love them. And there's it's so terrible for me to rank them because they do progressively get better, but still every season feels very, very different and almost, I don't want to say just standalone, but it feels very much there's something very unique about each season.
There's an identity specific to that season, and it's not like, oh, here's the next adventures. Like season to season.
But the core difference with season 1 of Better Call Saul is, again, they don't know they're coming back for more. So that's more of just like, that's if we only have one season to, again, without really, solving basically, season 1 is like, okay, we only got one shot of it. Let's just kind of like tell a story and kind of like, what can we say about, there's like a hope of coming back, but there wasn't a guarantee. So there's a little bit of an open-endedness, but it's basically like, if we don't check back in with this character, we can infer what happens because it's a prequel and it's like, okay, well, we know ultimately what happens when we kind of tease that up with, every opening of a Better Call Saul season is the black and white. It's we flash forward in black and white.
Yeah. I remember. That's the same way. It's like, oh, this is interesting. So
every season opens with one scene of that. So that's,
and that progresses and, I will eventually watch Better Call Saul. Yeah.
So that's the thing. So based on that, so any argument people I think would have with Better Call Saul in terms of like how the seasons work is that season 1 is more of like every episode is kind of like a fun kind of standout adventure. It's not standalone because it is feeding towards the end of that season, but it's just kind of like, it's a little bit more of like you get the flavor of like where the show could go direction wise, and then season 2 onwards, like there's an arc per the season.
There is, I think, because like this is kind of this is kind of still we're in the transition period from like episodic television, even for network cable, to like more seasonal. Like it was more of a trend, but there was still that kind of balance. And I think probably post Breaking Bad and during Better Call Saul, there's like more of like a seasonal kind of writing focus, which from what I gather, it's to its benefit.
Yeah.
And I think for Pluribus, I think this is a show that like when it's all said and done, where how many seasons it is, it'll be a show that when you watch from beginning to end, it's a complete story. It goes as far as, because I saw someone made this comment that like since The Sopranos and The Wire, there's no shows that like have the level of scale and ambition as those two shows are. Um, like the only shows that maybe get close are like someone mentioned like Mad Men and Leftovers, and I think for this show, because it's global, and also very individualistic, with Carol being kind of like a one person show for most of the time, it I think this is a show that once it's said it's done, I think it'll be regarded as one of the shows that like really pushed the boundaries of what you could do in television in terms of scale and like writing, especially in terms of the slow burn that will erupt over the next few seasons.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, so with the I guess just so we have the grenade. The grenade is kind of like this thing of it. It sets the tone of like the seeds for how things can go, and like the danger of the people pleasing AI ish kind of like collective. They don't get the subtleties of humanity, and this is honestly where we get kind of the alien nature of it all. Just kind of subtle. Again, the X-Files, the kind of alien nature, where it's like they're not quite getting the subtleties and the sarcasm, or again, like an AI not picking up on like the subtleties. What?
Not picking up on like sarcasm or like emotional tone. I think also part of it is kind of the thing, like it kind of makes the more like, oh, they're just using them as shells or husks, like the skin suit kind of feel more like visceral.
Yeah, yeah, and again, it's like the time where again, remember, there's a whole thing of like how it's the challenge of how can you be mad at a thing that it's it's the monkey paw moral, if you will. It's kind of the too much of a good thing. It's the they're very much like Vince Gilligan's operating the I Dream of Genie logic, where again, if the character were were happy, it's like the show's over. If you have a character who's like struggling with this, then there's the whole like Darren from not Darren from well I guess you could say Darren from Bewitched, but I'm saying like the captain from the astronaut blanking on his name from My Dream of Genie, but that guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, point being, so Zosha saves Carol and kind of ingratiates herself with that action, but also we set up the willingness to give Carol the nuke at the end of the season after the aftermath of that, and with that there's a danger there, and Carol's very present of the danger of they will give you anything, and this is kind of crazy. She used the truth serum to get some answers at him. I love the truth serum plan.
Mm-hmm.
I love that it actually it pretty much worked again until Zosha, she was going to almost cardiac arrest. That was the thing. It was working until she was just shutting down from the stress.
Yeah.
And the result being the Patrick Fabian voicemail message and all the drone comedy.
And the whole John Cena. Going to John Cena.
Yeah. So she's investigating, and we have HDP. So what is HDP, and how does John Cena frame it for us?
So basically, the hive mind cannot kill any animals to provide food or sustenance.
Or people. They can't harm anyone.
Yeah. They can rely on basically the dead animals that are there and make whatever food.
Mm-hmm.
They can't even pick an apple or whatever. But because there's so many dead corpses, they're utilizing them as basically like kind of like Soylent Green.
Yep.
And which I think like Matumbe is like Debate is aware of this.
Yeah, he was informed. Presumably, they've all been informed but Carol.
Well, it feels like Debate was just the one asking questions.
Yeah, if anyone asks, then
he was just kind of a curious guy, but he wasn't like trying to invest. He was just kind of like, oh, how do you like it's? And I think because
they don't volunteer information, the collective.
What?
They don't volunteer information. They just answer it when asked.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder if the others know by them asking, or if they have an idea and just don't want to directly confront or confirm it.
Hmm.
Which actually no, they do know because they're had to be aware of like the trying to like have make crops or have resources be enough beyond 10 years.
Yeah.
That's the time. I guess like do you think the show could go over a 10-year period like in universe, and or do you think like because you think the elephant in the room is the atom bomb. There's an atom bomb like in this show, and I'm just trying to figure out how do you like how do you write that in mind?
Okay, well, I mean, look. So first off, I don't think definitely not going to go 10 season. That much we know. But beyond, in terms of 10 years in the show, I don't think we're going to go that far because already the end of the season, beyond the atom bomb, the reason for the atom bomb is the ticking clock that we have with Carol. So the big thing is that so they
The
can't
cheaper,
harm any.
yeah.
So they can't harm anyone, but the basically I keep calling it a cure. It's kind of like, but
No,
it's not,
the serum
yeah.
or fluid. But my question though is that even if they were to convert Carol, would would she still not? Would they still not be able to do it if like Carol just says no still? Because I thought it was a matter of consent. So even though
No,
they have the means of turning Carol into one of them, they can't do it without her consent.
no. Here's how it worked, Rohit. Okay, we were in Vegas with Diabate, and the whole thing of like they got her answers after she made various calls. I love the drawn out call. Fabian, by the way. Anyway, she has to listen to the full message, and it's just we've all been there. We've all waited for leave a message after the anyway.
Yeah.
So it was the whole stem cell thing. They need stem cells, which means they have to harm Carol to do. They need to drive the needle presume at the time. And I called this, by the way. I knew this was going to happen. So they basically have to do the stem cell thing by like injecting a needle, and she did not give her consent for that. And she made it very clear, which again made her feel a lot more at ease. And that's what Diabate had done the same thing. Diabate said, he's so interestingly Diabate, he has said no to the stem cell thing as well. Now, Carol,
Yeah.
because of the reveal we have where she finds out, they've tracked down her
Eggs.
fertilized eggs, and those eggs have frozen eggs, and they have stem cells, which means they can do it non-invasively, which we saw from the get-go, from the pilot. They tried to infect her, they kissed her and all that, nothing. So as long as it's non-invasive, so long as it is like a non-violent, a thing that does not cause her pain, they promised, hey, we're going to turn you the moment we
Doesn't she
can.
still
That's
have to
them.
consent though? Because I think back at the beginning of the last episode, that girl that in that village, I thought she consented willingly to.
Well, that's a thing of like them all like they've been sold like on the process and how nice a thing it is. Like you'll be happy and part of like they're selling her on like the kind of the cult as it were. That's
Yeah, but like they're selling her, but she's buying, right? So I'm trying to figure out like how's it they're able to turn like
But it's another thing too, Rohit, of like we haven't explored until season 2 yet, where again, could Carol just say no, which we haven't posed the direct question like that yet. So, could she
oh, do you think she would be so lonely and so isolated that she just like say fuck it, like I'll join the hive to be part of something bigger?
I know what I mean is like we keep throughout the show we keep like with the stem cell thing, like Carol never thought to say no, I don't consent, but that's the thing, we've seen them do it without asking for consent in the first place in the first episode, which makes me think they don't need consent personally. That's what my takeaway is.
I
Because think about it, again, they tried to infect her without consent first time she showed up.
but by that logic, then would they just not? But that's the thing. The fact that
But
they're
she hasn't asked them directly no yet beyond the stems. She
yeah.
asked specifically, like, can you, I do not give you consent to harvest my stem cells
See, but
from
by
me.
no, but by that logic, why? I mean, there's still others that haven't been infected, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So, because that's the only
They
that's
need, right now, they were told that they told Diabate and everything. I guess Diabate probably asked the smart question. They're like, what are you working on? Like, how are you trying to do it? It's the stem cells. And he says,
yeah.
well, look, if I don't give consent, like, it causes you pain.
So you think the others are aware and said no?
I mean, they were. Well, again, assuming they asked the question, again, if we don't know if all of them, if Diabate's told everyone, or if they all, I forget if they mention that in the scene, but essentially anyone who was asked or knows about the stem cell thing.
See that's where I'm curious about, because at least it feels like to me the hive mind, when they're active and present, they don't try to they can't lie.
They can't lie, but they don't have to volunteer the information unless they're asked directly, though.
I mean,
that's the line. We've
I guess
established that.
Admission is a lie, but it's not like a voluntary lie.
Yep.
That's I mean, okay. So, but
now we saw a hesitation on them, though. You remember that we saw a hesitation, though, when Carol says, "Is there a way to undo it?" And Carol called her on that hesitation, so that was the closest thing we've gotten to a lie, though.
I think, though,
because I remember, and then kids again, they've been, Carol, like, it took her to get the true serum in her to get, to try and get like a way to undo it, and there's kind of a way to undo it, but we haven't found out how yet.
Do you think how like the 3 laws of robotics from Asimov?
Yeah. That's kind of what we're working with here.
Yeah, kind of worried that's like, because one of
the can't harm anyone, but
2, they can't, maybe like they must seek to survive, to spread the virus. They can't harm anyone. And then the third, I'm trying to think what's like a third thing, that they can't lie.
Yeah.
So they be truthful, be nonviolent, and then
do what humanity says.
Yeah. Be compliant. Be compliant. It's I guess for me, I'm wanting to see like how the others, like, because it'd be kind of scary if like Carol is interacting with the others.
Now, a lot of them, like we saw with the girl in the village, she's been sold on like the prospects of like, hey, conversion. So, which again brings it back to the conversion camp thing. We're like, hey, convert.
Or like another, like a conversion camp, for example, like the cultural because think of this, like, think how kind of eerie is like someone who's like from an indigenous or native culture seeing the hive like do a performance to soothe this girl into taking the liquid, and when she's one of them, they don't do the cultural like performance, or like the culture's dead.
That's the thing. Those are the little touches I find fascinating. Where it's like, they just kind of like, I can't trust the collective because of those moments there, because there's just like there's the put on.
I mean, was it a matter of trust? It's just a matter of like it's not like they necessarily hate or antagonistic towards other cultures or whatever. They're just trying to be as.
But it's cold logic. It's kind of like a cold logic. We don't need to do this, so we're not gonna do it. And that's the AI thing, kind of. It's sort of like the whole like we're just gonna do what's utilitarian to what we need.
But it's not just AI. It's also just kind of that's sort
of. Yeah. I know it's cool. I'm just saying it's kind of almost like trying to rationalize or playing against the computer kind of a thing. But you're right, though. It's more of a collective, just kind of like we've all unilaterally decided like we're not gonna, we're only going to do what we need to survive and spread our message. Because remember, another thing we set up that we're going to see is they're trying to spread this to other planets. They're building a tower to broadcast the signal and do this whole go galactic with it, which again is kind of like a little bit of the sci-fi stuff that we're doing in the background.
And it's like kind of like, do you see this as a virus or like a colonized, like an empire? Like I think that's kind of where like. Is Carol a doctor?
I really think Gilligan cracked the code on how do you practically do like an alien invasion story. This is how you do it.
Except I mean, yeah, and it's kind of what's funny.
It's vague, it's vague enough.
No, but what's funny about like how like the War of the Worlds ends, right? Where like all the aliens, they like get infected with like an Earthborn illness, whatever. And it's like, okay, instead of the aliens having either bringing in a virus or being impacted by diseases, kind of like with Native Americans and colonizers, the New World and all that stuff, have the colonizing or imperial force be the disease itself or virus, essentially. And I think there's so much the language, the whole visual of everyone kind of falling in unison. Yeah, I'm very interested to see how far Vince Gilligan takes it all, because also I just don't know like what are your end of the show? Like,
what do you think the ending of the whole show is?
Like, because I'm just trying to figure out like, do you think Carol will just become part of the hive mind and then nobody's freed and the hive mind just spreads from world to world? Like I'm trying to think like what is sort of the end point.
Well, I mean, look, thematically, I wonder if the show's ultimately going to be an examination on happiness, but I mean, that's kind of, I don't know. and with that, I wonder if like Carol's gonna. I think to me, just based on that logic, assuming that's what they subscribe to on the, I don't know. My thinking is at the end of the day, Carol will kind of she saved the world from happiness, and in doing so, she's found the contentment. She's found like only upon success will she find happiness.
Yeah, maybe
Like
the
everyone else is miserable, and again, your whole thing could be right. Where the reality is like she achieves a very dismal victory. The world is like, hey, I've gotten rid of them, but the world's not what it was, or people are living the consequences, and that makes her happy. That to me is what I think the ending is.
yeah.
But I
I
think everyone, it's like a miserable or bittersweet reality, and she's happy as a clam, and that's the irony.
because I'm thinking that's when like with what we've seen, well, what I've seen about Breaking Bad, what you've seen in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, do you feel like that kind of informs in your mind what you think is the likely ending for Carol or for the show, based upon like how Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul opened and ended?
Well, that's the thing. Those shows, with how they open and end, again, they are based on kind of the cell line, and that's honestly what I'm going off of here. Like their cell line, again, Mr. Chips a Scarface. That's what we do. Walter White.
Mhm.
It's the kind of the tragedy of becoming Saul Goodman, which essentially is what the premise of Better Call Saul was.
Yeah.
It's the big it's the creationism of the creation and basically fall, and where we leave Saul Goodman with everything, and then with Carol's going to save the world, is trying to save the world from happiness. So that to me, that's what the ending has to be. It has to be she's
It's
gonna
it's now it's the inverse where everyone is like Carol was the beginning, and Carol
yeah.
is the happiest. I mean, is paradoxically the happiest person on the world.
That's what I think it is. That's frankly what I think the ending's gonna be. If you ask me now after season one, I'm still thinking that's where ending's gonna be.
No, that's a really good fun way of ending the show overall, especially because like it'd be very curious if she's like gonna be happy when she's with another person at the end of the whole thing, or if she's happy when she's by herself, like just kind of seeing people around or interacting with people. I liked Ellie's thing about ending the protagonist reaching an unexpected peace is very in line with the previous.
That's very true.
Yeah.
That's part of the yep. Okay. So let's see. Of course, John Cena when he shows up too. It's just it was delightful. I love Vince Gilligan's rationale. It's the idea like if anyone's going to deliver if everyone's going to sell you on cannibalism, it's going to be John Cena.
I think also like the way John Cena talks, like in
Yeah.
interviews and just in certain roles, he has a very like formal, like matter of fact way of speaking.
Yeah.
When he's explaining all this, like, you kind of just accept it. Not that you agree with it, but like it sounds right or authoritative.
Yeah.
So
Yep. Oh, by the way, just another here's a cameo for you. So Vince Gilligan has never appeared in any of the shows before. Like, he's never had like a Hitchcock moment
yeah,
until this show. You heard about this, didn't you?
I may have. I just didn't look too far into it.
So we built up the whole HDP mystery, and she follows the milk carton, and she goes to the facility, and we have all the body parts and everything. So when we ended like one episode of like on a cliffhanger before we revealed HD in the top of the next episode, we see what horrifying thing she found.
Yeah.
It's all the chopped up body parts, shrink wrapped and everything. The head that she holds up, that's Vince Gilligan's head.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a casting of Vince Gilligan.
That's awesome.
The head that she holds up, that's Gilligan's head.
Man,
he's so unrecognizable since he shaved off like the mustache and goatee. By the way, but yeah, that's him.
No, wait. Is it a cast model of Vince Gilligan?
Yeah, it's like it's his severed. They made a casting of his head.
Like
the
Chris
severed
Pratt.
head she's holding up that you see, that's Vince Gilligan's head.
It's like Chris Pratt's whole body double in Guardians 3.
Well, yeah, but just the head. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, other movies with severed head. But yes, that's it. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. That's awesome.
I love Carol doing like the videos and everything. By the way, just trying to it's very do it yourself. Very just kind of like like the YouTuber trying to save the world, which I don't know. I thought it was kind of it's like how it was presented in the whole.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay, so we've already talked a lot about the whole Manusos thing. So yeah, I think we kind of ran the gambit there against let's see. I'm just trying to think if there's anything I didn't bring up with it already.
Ooh, okay. So when we first see Zosha,
Yeah.
I thought she was Middle Eastern because she's in the Middle East, I think.
Yeah, it looks like it. Yeah,
and she's wearing like a white dress that's like very dirty or messed up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm very curious what Zosha's life was like immediately before.
I imagine not good.
Yeah, do you think she's like a human trafficking victim?
You know, that depends on where. Again, I
Because
feel.
she's Polish. She's from Eastern Europe, and not to play into stereotypes and all, but
Wait, so where is she from?
she's Polish.
Oh, yeah, she's Polish. I mean, how old do you think she is?
Oh, I mean, the actress, she is 44 years old.
I don't think she's being human trafficked. I don't think so.
Okay, because the thing is, like,
It's a get. I didn't get that vibe when I saw it, and I don't think age wise that tracks with most human trafficking victims. I know it's not an exact science with that. I'm just saying it usually, sadly, they traffic underage girls mostly, or at least girls who are kind of
like
either underage to like
yeah,
young on the young side. So
call yeah, no, I that's unfortunately right.
I know it's a sad reality, folks,
Yeah,
but that,
I think maybe she could have been like a tourist that like like a Polish tourist or whatever that like was in the Middle East at the time.
yeah.
Because that's the kind of thing I'm just wondering like how long did it must it take like processing wise to just find. I guess I'm just trying to like I just don't know how you imagine to like how long it took for them to just conveniently find in the high mind that one person who happens to look exactly like the female version of Carol's pirate character.
Yeah. Well, they really love those books, Rohit. They knew that
Yeah,
cover.
no, yeah, I'm very curious because like I feel like there has to be something in her background that makes her relationship with Carol even more icky than it kind of already is. Like you
Well,
can,
remember, okay, so here's something in conjunction with that. We had the diner. In the diner, we had that great thing where it's like the diner that would burn down. And it was like where she and Helen went and everything. It was a really special spot for her. And then it's like, hey, this is something for a moment. This is something positive that has come from all this. And then she thinks about the poor waitress. She retired and everything, and she's just been drugged back into this place.
she's a puppet, yeah.
And I think that's ultimately where you're looking at with the Zosha thing, and that's what would sink in with Carol. It's like, God, it's just like what life she had and all that, and that's again the ethical thing she was kind of having, kind of in the before and after, doing the deed with her too. So
Because no, well, as far as what we know about Sosha, like she's Polish. Um, she didn't have like a lover or like a significant other. So I guess I'm just wondering, like, how did she end up where she did at the beginning of the show?
that's a good question.
Yeah, because that is a very striking image to like.
Well, again, it looks like they have the room to tell that story if they want. Again, I don't think they're opposed to. It's the question of like, how much of a that's the thing. I don't want it to be a thing where it's like they have to explain everything or we have to make it like more seasons than we need. But it could be, again, they have the room though.
I mean, it could be really just in a line of dialogue, right?
Yeah,
It's like
that's
flash,
yeah.
but still, it'd be very interested to see like because I think it's always something. It's always important, like in this show, for whenever like one of the unaffected gets to know information about the about the person they used to be in that body.
Yeah.
And I feel like that one character, Zosha, like she gives bits and pieces. I feel like there has to be something that Zosha promotes. Yeah, yeah. So Ellie mentions that Zosha has a scar on her back, but doesn't know if that's purposeful makeup or a real scar on Carolina Wider's body.
Well, the other thing too is did you see the scar? Because my impression was when I recalled seeing the scar, that was I assume from the grenade. Now, if it
Oh,
was, I don't know that if it was when she was walking through when she was getting washed up and everything through the hotel and she had that scar, then yeah, it's pre-existing. If it's not, that's from the grenade.
It could be a thing where when she got turned, like she suffered an injury in the turning process, like maybe, or she was like in
No,
a.
that would have been a fresh wound. It's not a scar though. It just would nah.
Mm.
I'm saying it's too soon. Like the scar would have been like we saw. Like
Yeah, I guess how much time passes. Okay, I see what you mean.
Admittedly, the grenade thing's still another thing, but I forget like how the wound looked a little. It looked more wound than scar to me. So if it's a wound, I'm thinking it's grenade. If not, then it was a pre-existing scar. I can't.
Yeah, it's we'll I knowing Vince Gilligan, he'll follow up on that like
Yeah.
unexpectedly.
If it's important, we'll go back to it.
Yeah, no, it's a. Oh man, I'm very excited to see Menusos interact with Debate and all the other unaffected.
Oh god, just the Menusa's reaction to Diabate is just going to be
Debate,
priceless.
yeah. Um, yeah, I'm just.
Oh, by the way, you know where Diabate's staying in Vegas?
Oh, he's at the Caesar Palace.
Well, it's I forget if it's sorry. But what I meant is that wherever he's staying, that's the hotel where Elvis was basically held prisoner. When I say held prisoner, I just mean that was the one where he,
Oh, we had like the
Tom Parker basically put him
lost.
into the bad contract in Vegas, and he was so essentially the gag is it's kind of a hotel haunted by Elvis because that's where Elvis was mistreated and all.
Okay, yeah.
So that's where he's staying. That's when they mention it in dialogue briefly, but that's where they're staying. And they actually shot there. They actually shot in Vegas, from what I understand. There, it was like the one time they went kind of outside of Albuquerque for the whole shoot.
It's interesting. Diabate is like his fantasies is like being Vegas. Like I wonder as a like I'm very much. He feels like to me like a guy that's like wanted to immigrate to America and is like super into Americana.
Yeah,
Yeah, that I'd
I
be
get
very
that vibe. I think you're right
yeah.
on the money with that.
Yeah, which now kind of puts an interesting wrinkle to like how he's the most like is he kind of the stereotypical American where he just like uses other people's as toy like hey do this for like the stereotypes that people have about American tourists abroad. Oh man,
Yeah.
that's something to pack in further detail. But
All right.
well,
So I guess in closing, just the hit the atom bomb of it all.
yeah,
Okay, so here's what we've set up by the end. So we revealed the ticking clock of the show now. So despite the premise, they now have access. The whole like the problem, the three laws of robotics esque kind of rules that we're playing by here. They can't harm Carol without her. They can't inject her with anything without her consent, but they don't have to inject her anymore. This is the part that I called. I knew that the moment they introduced that plot, I knew. Okay, these guys aren't gonna quit. They're gonna come. It's gonna be like a legalese, like a fine print kind of loophole of like they're going to find some way to do it, with non-invasively. That's going to be the big turning point. No matter how close, even before she was getting close to Joshi, I knew like that's going to rear its head, and that's where the rift's going to be, and we brought it back.
Also, here's something that would be very curious about. I feel like Vince Gilligan has done a lot for the show, but I'm very curious thought about this. Is that how there's like tribes that are like super isolated from like civilization or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
or even just people that are like off the grid and don't interact with society at all.
Yeah.
Like there might be more people that have been uninfected that the hive mind haven't accounted for because those are people that are just off the grid, not in any formal records or whatever.
I mean, it's possible, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like that could be a way in which Carol could have an upper hand against the hive if there's actually more people that have been uninfected that the hive couldn't have accounted for.
Yeah.
And then maybe it's where the AI and like AI is only as good as what's inputted, and there are people that for one reason or another don't have formal records like social security or like because they were born or intentionally have like lived outside of the fringes.
Well, that's the thing. It's honestly it's less of that. It's more of like people. Well, you're right. That'd be a big factor in terms of finding them. But in general, though, it's a thing. If they can't, if they like physically, definitely, if they physically can't find the person to infect them, then there might be people that they didn't account for.
Yeah,
They're completely off the grid, unfindable. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. All right. So point being, so we have so there's a threat to Carol that okay they've cracked it. They've given her the timeline. It's a matter of months or maybe a month. I forget if they said like
It's like 2 to 3 months is
2 to 3 months. So that's what's interesting. This is kind of like almost the Walter White kind of like kind of cancer timeline we're kind of operating.
Yeah.
So we have months that we're working off of, which I think is going to be interesting going forward in the season. At least for season 2, we have months on the clock.
Yeah.
For the non-invasive, serum or virus. And Carol's going to war and I love the last scene that she has with Zosha, where you kind of see like on their faces, and it's kind of a side. Zosha brings her the atom bomb and the helicopter, and they have that look to each other without dialogue, where it's like they kind of know this is the beginning of a quote unquote war between them, perhaps, or at least like Carol knows. I want to say they both kind of know, but definitely Carol knows. Like, yeah, we're parting ways on this one, and the atom bomb is because she had to ask for the atom bomb, and I think they kind of knew based on the grenade, kind of this is there's kind of I don't think it's just like a hapless yes. I think it's a little bit of that the atom bomb was like a thing she brought up to them, and this is like she wants the atom bomb, and they had to think they had to weigh the ethical thing before they gave her the atom bomb, and they had to give her the command code and all that. So,
Mhm.
um, so basically, yeah. So we end with it's Carol and Manusos, and yeah, it's she's got a bomb on her doorstep, not just a bomb, like the bomb on her doorstep. And I suspect upon hearing this, I think Lashima Lashma is going to have some thoughts on this, and I think she's going to rally people against Carol. She has an atom bomb. We have to stop her. I think it's going to be a whole oh boy, and I think it's going to be a whole thing. And by the way, Apple pitched the ending. Originally, the season did not end on the bomb. It did not.
Which is kind of crazy that like Studio Notes kind of not forced, but like had Vince Gilligan come up with that ending. In this
Yeah, it was a really good idea because they based their note was like, I think you need kind of more of like a kind of an exciting kind of like tension building ending, and because they obviously they have a bit of like okay, here's kind of where we're going. He says, well, you should really you need something. I don't know. They didn't say like atom bomb specifically. You need something kind of dramatic to end on, and then I think Gordon Smith maybe came up with the atom bomb.
okay. Yeah, I'm very interested to see where that goes, and it's basically it's a 4-season plan. How many seasons do you think this show?
Well, it's that right now it's like confirmed 3 seasons. There, I think they've estimated like likely 4 seasons. I mean, frankly, look, I don't look. He's said like on record that really depends on like, however long Ray Seahorn wants to do it. He's willing to do it, and then I think they'll make sure the story makes sense to go accordingly. That it's basically based on the logic of all the other shows that have been hugely successful going on, which is the character, your lead actor slash the character they forged, depending on how strong that character is, will define like where the story goes and how many seasons ultimately that necessitates. So I think it's ultimately going to live or die by that. And we know we're at least getting 3 seasons. We have a ticking clock. We know at least a month to at least 2 months could be covered within season 2. At some point, I don't think the bomb's going to go off, frankly. But I think we're going to have to deal with it in season 2. So I think season 2 is going to be dedicated to that. Season 3 is going to be okay. Back to the problem at hand. 4, that's the thing. It's a question of we're gonna end it on 3, or are we feeling confident enough to do 4? I really don't see it personally. I don't see it going past 4. But then again, for all mankind, it still isn't over yet, right?
Well, because the plan is for the season to go for 7 seasons,
Right.
and
So I mean,
yeah, so it's like right. I mean, really, like when the 5th
that's
season,
the longest running Apple show, isn't it?
by the time the 5th season comes out, yes. Well, no, there's also Slow Horses.
Okay. Well, the point being is we know Apple be willing to let it go. It seems like Apple would be willing to let it go on, especially if it's Vince Gilligan's name attached to it. And I forget Vince Gilligan signed a deal with somebody. I forget if it. I could have sworn he signed a deal with AMC, but we haven't really seen the fruits of that. So I don't know if that maybe got transferred to Apple or not. I don't know. So I don't.
He signed and or renewed an overall deal with Sony Pictures Television in September 2020.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's where like kind of um they helped out with setting things up at Apple, and so
Okay, well there you go.
yeah.
So let's see. So at least, I mean, so at a minimum, like he signed that. That was a 5. I think it's a 5 year. Was that 3 year or 5 year?
It was a 4-year deal. I don't know. It says it started it or renewed it. So I mean, yeah, let me look at it. It's just that way I'm not misrepresenting the details of this deal.
Okay, but
So,
look, based on the contract alone, I would say at least we're locked in for as many years. It could, in theory, it could at least go as many years as that initial contract
yeah.
was.
So Vince Gilligan signed a 4-year exclusive deal to continue his creator partnership with the studio, and then under his banner, he'll be continuing to develop and produce scripted series for all platforms.
Now, obviously, okay, you keep going.
and so and considering Sony doesn't have a streaming service, then he can just kind of produce and make shows for any old like he can make a show for Netflix, Amazon.
So long as Sony is like the one, it's under Sony.
They're the ones that are creating it because the thing is like
Yeah.
that kind of the lucky one to not have a streaming service, and because like it doesn't seem like outside Netflix any other company really benefits so much from a streaming service in the sense that like it feels like not like after the bubble, after the kind of peak of streaming, it's like it's not like it makes money, but it's not like a consistent like money grower. It's a money maker. It's spinning alongside all other assets or subsidiaries.
Right. So anyway, so the point being, I'd imagine maybe we're looking at like, honestly, I really don't see it going past 4 seasons, but because based on like just the premise of it's a very direct premise of we're looking for a way to undo this, and whether or not it's going to be able something she can undo,
Would you have thought that Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul would have gone as long as they did when you started watching them at the beginning? Or
I mean, I think ultimately, any of us like predicts like a 5-season things, and you got to remember, really, those are 5-season shows that then kind of got Better Call Saul is more of like just matched the number of episodes Breaking Bad had. Where Breaking Bad was 5 seasons, and AMC split up the 5th season, because of the whole. I'm trying to remember. Actually, I'm struggling to remember if like the plan was like 6, and they just kind of called. Honestly, I think it's 5, and they. Oh wait, sorry, I got it. It was 5, and they split in half because AMC wants to build suspense. So that's thing. So Breaking Bad automatically, I think that's 5 seasons, and Better Call Saul was just
Better Call Saul 63, and so
because they had 10 episodes versus like the other number.
Yeah. So here's the question. So it's 9 episodes the first season. I don't know if they'll have one more episode in the second season. But let's say 9 to 10 episodes a season. So imagine if it has as many episodes as like Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul.
I really in my bones I really think Gilligan's gonna like not look. I'm okay if it goes that long. I don't think it is. I can't tell you why. It's just a feeling I have that like I don't know. I mean, I could see them taking their time with it, and they could extend it. I don't think anyone would complain. It really depends on what Ray Seahorn feels like doing. I don't see like look in theory any actor like they'd be insane to like walk away from it unless they really felt creatively unchallenged. Knowing who she's working with, she should never feel creatively unchallenged. So in that theory, the show go on forever. But I don't
because think of it. So like for
Breaking I think she cares about the story. I think it's going to like end at a reasonable point. Like I'm saying, season 4 at minimum 4, may at most 5, I guess.
Yeah, because like Breaking Bad lasted 5 years, 5 seasons, 62 episodes. Better Call Saul was 7 years, 5 or 6 seasons, 63 episodes. So like, and considering the show, it's not because the thing is, Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad released year to year. It had annual seasons. Pluribus is like every 2 years.
It's in a tricky spot with that.
Yeah, that might also make it not have as many seasons as it would typically have.
So that's maybe it's a reason I'm really thinking we're just gonna like we're gonna tell what the story needs, and we're not gonna really go beyond that, which is part of the course.
How much time it takes to write and shoot and everything, and like if this is 2 years, because the thing is, you did
like Barry had a problem with this as well, where Barry's production time kind of killed its buzz. But I mean, it was great, but like people.
But that was because Bill Hader was a guy that was in demand and did movies and TV, and like Rhea Seehorn is like a TV actress. She's a great TV actress, but she's a TV actress. So like, again, I think the production time might make it so that like for Vince Gilligan, it's like for Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, you just made a season TV every year, but for this show where it takes 2 years. I think I'm more inclined to believe that it'll have lesser seasons only because it takes longer to make like each season. That's Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul.
All right. So on that note, I think it's safe to say you and I we love the show. We can't wait for more of it.
Yeah, but I guess if it's 4 seasons, then like season 2 comes out 2027.
Most likely, yeah.
And then 2029. So literally, the show will be over 2031 with just 4 seasons.
I hope I live long enough to see the ending of the show. I'm going to say that much.
I think we'll make it.
I hope so. Anyway, so I want to thank. So again, overall, we're loving the show. Again, God bless Vince Gilligan and company. LEB says, "Thank God Sony doesn't have streaming service." Last thing, streaming services, pretty much. Yeah, but just overall, I want to thank LEB for tuning in and caring about the conversation there. I'm surprised anyone showed up for it, honestly. So I'm glad she did. And yeah, again, I'm thrilled with the show. I can't wait for. I'm on the edge of my seat. Again. I just love that Gilligan's like still able to pull off this hat trick, and it doesn't feel like the same show. It doesn't feel like we're riding off the coattails of the Albuquerque versus. If we are in terms of like everybody tuning in because of that, it's becoming its own thing. I'm so glad that everyone across the board seems to be recognizing how good the show is off the bat, and that makes me feel really good. And it's like there was like a really good way to kind of like transition from one year to the other. So it's gonna be a long wait, but definitely it's good. It's good to see Vince Gilligan still getting buzz and being able to do a show that's really is in theory like a really hard sell, but everyone's watching and they're all blown away by it. That's a good.
If it doesn't fall into the fate of the Apple show curse, I feel like Ted Lasso's postseason 1, For All Mankind postseason 2, and then Severance postseason 1, it's gonna be. I would think it has a chance to be the best show on Apple TV.
I mean, that's the thing. If any show's ever going to be immune to that, like Carol, it would be Pluribus.
Yeah. And for anyone that is maybe not American, pluribus, to explain it, it's from the Latin quote "e pluribus unum," which is out of many one.
Yeah.
Which you see in U.S. currency, it's the United States. So it's great to kind of see that be utilized in this very sci-fi of an India. So on that note, thank you everyone. Thank you, Ellie, for showing up. Dragon, I appreciate for us two to spend 3 hours discussing about this 9-episode show. Goes to show how much we had a lot to say from Vince Gilligan. I hope we have more to say for all the future seasons that come when they do come. Until then, I personally bid you all a good night.
Remember, folks, someone gives you a grenade, it's real.
He's so goddamn fuckable.